Welcome back to the live show. Welcome back to the live show. You know what time it is? It is your boy Genesis. I am back with another episode. Yes, sir. I told y'all I was gonna be back. Now we're back. What's going on, everybody? How are you doing? Yes, everybody. All right. How are you doing? It is currently 2:16 a.m. and today's date is the 7th of December 2024. Yeah, man. We're back. We are back. The title for today is Hard Work and Dedication in America. Okay? Hard work and dedication in America. How are you doing? Thank you for tuning in one more time. You guys are the best. Let me know. How are you doing, man? Whew. If like some of you don't go to sleep. Some of you do not go to sleep. And I'm wondering, how and why don't you go to sleep? Just like me. I don't go to sleep, people. I mean, I sleep, yeah. I'm not gonna cap, but it's like I don't even go to sleep like that. All right, we're gonna go into this show with enthusiasm, with optimism, and with great energy. Okay, great energy, optimism, and good vibes. All right. Thank you for tuning in one more time. It is your boy Genesis. You know what time it is. All right. Hard work, guys. Hard work. What is going on with Biden, Hunter, and the press secretary? Well, press secretary of the Trump new White House had something to say.
We are going to watch for that to begin. As we do, we expect lots of questions on Hunter Biden after Karine Jean-Pierre repeatedly said at these briefings that President Biden would not pardon his son. We know how that went. Incoming Trump press secretary Caroline Leavitt joins us now, and it is a pleasure to have you here.
It's great to see you, Sandra. Thanks for having me.
By the way, I want to first point out that you are going to be the youngest White House press secretary in U.S. history, 27 years old. What was it like the day you got the job?
It's an incredible honor, and I'm so humbled that President Trump believes in me to speak on his behalf as the next president of the United States. I've been his spokeswoman on the campaign trail for the past 2 years, and it's been the honor of a lifetime to witness the greatest political campaign in history. So I very much look forward to this. It's a big responsibility. I feel the weight of that, but I'm excited to speak on behalf of a president who has a real mandate from the American people to change their lives and to deliver on the promises he made on the campaign trail.
He said in his announcement that you would be his press secretary, that you will excel at the podium. Speaking of which, we just saw a live look at the podium because we are anticipating a White House press briefing. And this will be her first on-camera appearance, Karine Jean-Pierre. She did one gaggle, but since the president pardoned his son, Hunter, here she was repeatedly denying that that would ever happen. Watch.
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well, is there?
I just said no. I just answered. Go ahead.
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no. It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no, and I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
I don't know any other way to look at it than she was lied to, and she was sent out to that podium to say that, and he has since pardoned his son. How would you handle a situation like that?
You tell the truth, and I think Karine Jean-Pierre was lied to, or she was lying to the press and therefore the American people, which is a complete dereliction of duty. And you need to have a direct relationship to your boss, which I do in President Trump, who tells the truth. And I'm just here to voice his opinion on behalf of him to the American public, and I plan to do that in my role. Unfortunately, this was not the first lie that we heard from the Biden White House at that podium. Karine Jean-Pierre and the Biden White House consistently told the American people the border was secure. Americans knew that wasn't true. They told them Bidenomics was working, inflation was transitory. Those were both lies as well. We also heard the White House press secretary say that her boss was mentally fit and capable for the job. We saw that was not true either on the debate stage. And so we look forward to bringing truth and transparency back to the White House in January.
Are you planning or thinking through any potential changes in the way that room works and way the press briefings work? Because this is a headline and quote from The Hill on President-elect Trump's potential shakeup of the White House press briefing room. They're saying that the press corps is recoiling at his threat to shake it up. It would be a total mess. So one White House reporter told The Hill this week, I would expect people would probably boycott the briefings, so that would put certain outlets in a tough spot. Any plans to change the way the briefing room works?
Well, let me preface by saying that there has never been a more transparent president than Donald Trump. We saw that in his first term. He consistently called the press into the Oval Office when he was signing bills. He took questions from them directly. That's something the press, I know, is yearning for. They have not had that over the past 4 years. So their transparency and their access to the leader of the free world will be increased, and also to the press secretary as well. We will be holding briefings in that room. I think as far as the landscape of the briefing room, it needs to reflect the media habits of the American people in 2024, not in the 1980s. And President Trump won this election by utilizing non-traditional, non-legacy media voices outside the Beltway. That's clearly who the American people are listening to. That's how they're digesting their news. And I think it would be irresponsible of us not to include some of those voices in the briefing room. It is my job to communicate the president's message to the American people as effectively as possible. And we're looking into ways to do that.
So some of those independent journalists will be invited in.
We don't know specific changes just yet, but we're certainly exploring all options.
All right. I want to finish up by asking you about some of the president-elect's picks as of now. One of the first things you sat down was the optimism that we heard from the president-elect in a tweet this morning over Pete Hegseth in the Department of Defense. What do you see happening there?
Well, contrary to what many in the media are reporting, there has never been a wavering in the optimism and the confidence from President Trump in Pete Hegseth. He is brilliant. He is intelligent. He is a war fighter, a decorated combat veteran who honorably served this great country. And when you hear him speak on Capitol Hill, you hear how passionate he is to stand up for the war fighters, the men and women who are honorably serving this country in uniform. The Pentagon is clearly failing the American people. Look at the conflicts we are embroiled in abroad. They just failed their 7th audit in a row. The American people elected President Trump to nominate outsiders who are not entrenched in Washington politics to shake up the swamp. That's exactly what Pete Hegseth is going to do. That's why the swamp is after him. President Trump stands by him 100%.
What's it like to spend all that time around Elon Musk?
He's a very interesting and brilliant guy who, once in a generation business leader who's going to bring real change to the government. It's going to be an exciting 4 years.
They've got everybody talking, he and Vivek, with this Doge. Even Senator Fetterman says, I don't know why it's controversial to want to eliminate waste.
Who could be against government
efficiency? Can you imagine that?
That's
Some bipartisan agreement. Great to have you here, Caroline. Congratulations on.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. 27 years old. And she is going to be Trump's White House press secretary. That is a big deal for her family. It's a lot of work. You're going to have to get up, do what you have to do, support the president, and then speak with confidence and tell the American people the truth. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a hard job. It's not going to be a walk in the park, obviously. However, she seems like she has a good head on her shoulders. And yeah, everything looks like it's going to work for her. Hopefully it does work for her. And some people are saying Karine Jean-Pierre is probably the worst press secretary ever. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. I think she just has a bad administration, she doesn't have someone who actually makes good decisions for her to then come out and make a good announcement based on the good policy they made. You know what I mean? Like, it was easier for, what's her name, Haley, to be able to speak nicely because Trump was making good policies back in 2016. And when Kaylee came out, Kellyanne, or I guess her name was Kelly or Kellyanne, and when she would come out, she'd be like, you know what, this, because it was easy for her. You need a commander in chief with um, with some guts that can go out there and make headlines because they made good decisions for the American people. You know, that's just what I think. And what is going on with TikTok? What is going on with TikTok? It's been said that TikTok would have to be sold or banned. Are you guys on TikTok? At least TikTok USA. They may be banned if they don't find a buyer. They need a buyer, or they will be banned.
We begin with our expert panel and 3 things investors ought to be thinking about right now. On the Barron's Roundtable, my colleagues Ben Levison, Megan Lenhart, and Al Root. Ben, stocks. Good week for stocks again. Is it the same stuff that's been working all along?
Well, it depends on what you count as working all along. This was a big week for big tech. And big tech had actually fallen out of favor a little bit. But this week, it was back in a big way. Meta in particular hit a new high, got a boost on Friday with the TikTok possibly getting banned. I called it the TikTok. I'm sorry about that. But yes, it was a great week.
Only because you're 100. Go ahead.
I am. So the NASDAQ finished at a high. The S&P finished at a high. The Dow dropped a little bit, but it had been leading before, so it's okay for it to take a rest.
Okay, everyone seems happy with their 401k
They love
performance. My friends keep asking me, is the S&P 500, is my fund about to tank because it went up too quickly? And I tell them, I can't tell you that. Only Ben knows that. So tell my friends, are there S&P 500 funds about to tank?
Well, I look at the stock market and I'm scared. Stock market's expensive. The valuation is high. It's gone up more than 20% for 2 years in a row. That's probably not a great thing. But then I look at everything that's going on. The economy's great. AI, I know people are worried about it, but AI has been great. I'm thinking, why not? Let's go for year number 3. I think actually the risk is that we go up even more, not that we fall.
I mean, you're absolutely right. The fundamentals are there, Ben, and really the economic fundamentals. So we actually just got jobs today on Friday. It was really a good report, pretty benign. And what was interesting, though, was we saw unemployment tick up. And I actually think that this gives the Fed room to cut this month. So it will be an interesting one.
Ben, what are you watching in the week ahead?
Well, speaking of the Fed, I'm looking at inflation. It has 2 things it's supposed to do, price stability and full employment. We got the full employment. Now we just need to see inflation come in right where it's expected, about 2.6% for the headline. That would be in line with October. If it comes in at that level or a little bit lower, market's going to be fine.
Okay, Al, AT&T had an investor day. These are shareholders that not too long ago had to wear paper bags over their heads out of embarrassment about what the stock had done for a very long time. Now they're holding their heads up high. The stock is outperforming since spring. What's going on?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think the big message from the investor day was share buybacks over, sending money to money heaven. Remember old columns of yours, buying DirecTV. They spent, including debt, between 60 and 70 billion on all of these assets.
Dishes on your roof. That's not the future of television.
And then, they sold them for much less than they bought them for. So, they're going to generate like 50 billion of free cash flow over the coming 3 years. And the new strategy is take 20 billion of that and buy stock back in addition to the dividends. So I think the message is really, if you're not like a fast-growing AI, stock with great outlooks, why don't you just give cash back to shareholders?
So it's a phone company that has figured out that it wants to be a phone company. No more show business, nothing crazy. Would you buy the stock here?
So our colleague, Paul LaMonica, pointed out something very interesting. AT&T is up about 40% year to date. It's outperformed Verizon by about 30 points. Verizon is also a phone company, no crazy strategy, also huge free cash flow, and trades at about 9 times earnings. AT&T trades at 11. He thinks it's a good idea to flip into Verizon for 25.
Okay, interesting. Megan, our cover story this week is on international investing. Now, I dutifully put some of my savings in overseas markets, even though the U.S. has outperformed forever, and all I really care about is when's NVIDIA going to double again. So am I still doing the right thing here?
I think it really is about a diversification play when it comes to international exposure right now. It's good for value as well. And if you do have, an active management situation, this is the time to really employ it. Now, it's one of those situations where we have some names that our experts kind of came to us with that everyone knows about. And we have some that most people have probably never heard of.
Let's hear some picks.
All right. So, the big one, I think, is Hermes. Obviously, a really great luxury brand. It has, exposure in overseas overseas markets. It's getting in a lot of good things right now. Of course, Al, you're going to love this one. BYD, everyone's favorite e-car company out of China. I'm going to call it an e-car. I love that. And then, we have some ones that are a little bit different. So out of India, one of the analysts was talking about Mrs. Bector's Food Specialties. This is biscuits and breads. It feels like a very quaint, fun company, but it is actually a great buy here. And
food here is boring. But in India, maybe this is a hot stock, a growth opportunity.
I do actually think it's a growth opportunity. So this is a good one. And the last one I want to talk about is a bank. I know it sounds kind of boring, but this is OTP Bank, and it is headquartered in Budapest. It actually is the largest Central European bank for both retail as well as commercial. So this is something where we may actually see it get a little bit of a boost when we start to see Ukraine, get into that reconstruction phase.
What about for someone who's not a stock picker quickly? Is this one where you would go to an index? Would you use active management?
I really think this is an active management kind of play. I think you have to be a little bit more cautious and really kind of plant the flag in places that you know are going to give you some good returns, especially if you're doing this long term.
Got it. Thank you all.
So those were, I guess, we're talking about some stocks that would be a good pick. However, it's like I do ETFs. I think ETFs are like the best. This is my opinion. You don't have to take it. But yeah, ETFs for me. That's not even a conversation. This is long term. If you're trying to invest and get a return on your investment based off of long term, then you should be focusing on ETFs. That's just me, okay? That's not a financial advice. With that being said, what is going on with SpaceX? SpaceX, guys. Elon is on fire these days. He's just doing everything. It's popping. It's basically popping. Elon is popping right now, bro.
All right, folks. So my next guest has been absolutely
Shout out
crushing
to,
it. I mean,
let's just be honest, shout out to Stuart MC. No, I haven't gotten the puppy yet.
to things. So they get into a lot of these stocks early. But the great news is they found a way for retail to get in some names early, certainly not waiting for these overpriced IPOs. So I'm going to bring an Entrepreneur Share LLC, their COO, Ava Ottos. Ava, welcome back
Thank you, Stuart, for asking. I really do need this puppy, bro.
to the show.
Thank you.
First and foremost, I mean, you're still killing it. Every day it seems like someone jumps on an app loving from bandwagon, so I'm thinking about you a lot. But let's talk about this new ETF that you have, this crossover ETF, and what makes it so unique, because one thing we know about Wall Street, there's always been levels, right? You retail, you get offered all kinds of stuff, but there's juicy things that are offered to private equity, and you're now able, for instance, the gem of all gems in private companies is SpaceX.
Exactly.
And you have found a way to get SpaceX to the retail investors.
Yeah, finally. We want to democratize it and give access to everyone, really, to get access to these names. SpaceX, that's right now, XOVR, the crossover ETF from ER Shares, is the only ETF that offers investors and retail investors access to private equity, and especially SpaceX, which many people want to get into, and it's so hard. We're the only ETF that now offers access to SpaceX. It's an unbelievable company. As you know, like if we compare to NASA, it's so much more efficient.
Sure. I mean, well, the SpaceX thing is absolutely phenomenal, and you can see obviously it's the price keeps going up on the private side. I imagine at some point they will go public. But also the way you've got this structured, I understand. So a big chunk is SpaceX, but the bigger chunk is your index that has done extraordinarily well, which is your Entrepreneur 30. We've talked about that on the show. You put it out in 2005. It's up over 2,000%, up 62% this year. Those are the names that you apply sort of a VC research approach to, right?
Exactly. It's the Entrepreneur 30 Index. So we relaunched our fund in August 29. Since then, it has more than doubled the Qs and the S&P. And for the year, we're up 62%, the index. So now 85% of XOVR will be tracking the R30 index, which is the 30 best entrepreneurial companies. And as we've spoken before, NVIDIA, for example, was in our index in 2005, Amazon. So we get these companies very early. And now the rest of it, 15%, will be in private equity in names like SpaceX. And so names that we believe
do you plan to add names? I mean, I guess it sounds like you're being very selective. It's not about quantity, but quality.
Exactly. For example, SpaceX right now is our biggest weight. We believe in it. We got into it on Monday. That's public knowledge at $135 per share. That's at a $250 billion valuation. And then when the tender offer comes up, we expect and we're hopeful that it's going to increase the valuation. So
now, the crossover, by the way, I'll let the folks out there know, since last year, it started a year ago, last December, it was 12, now it's 19. So it's already made a really good move. But I'm always fascinated with this because, I have different kind of brokers and things are offered to me that aren't offered to regular folks.
Exactly.
And sometimes you get these upsides and you say, golly, how come that, you have to be an accredited investor, all that kind of stuff. So I think what you're doing here is absolutely phenomenal for anyone who believes in the SpaceX story and they want to participate in it. Let me ask you about the broader market. Market's on fire. Animal spirits are through the roof. Do you like what you see here?
I love what I see here. I've been optimistic all year. As you know, I'm getting even more optimistic now. I think we're going to have a great year end, and I'm very hopeful that 2025 will be great, especially for companies that are high growth, ultra high growth in some cases, private equity. We see more companies now staying private for longer. So, for example, SpaceX, we don't know if it's going to go public. We see what's going on now with Elon Musk, with the nuisance lawsuits. There's so much regulation. So I think private equity, there's a lot of money going into private equity, high-tech companies, AI companies, we love AI. These companies are going to do great in 2025, hopefully.
The amount of money that's being raised right now still on the VC side is mind-boggling, to your point. And these areas, and I mean, we got RFK Jr. coming in, right? The farming, new nutritional things. There are names that are going to become household names 5-10 years from now, but people will be able to invest in them much sooner if they know about them.
Exactly. Right. And it made me sad all this time that friends of mine and people I know and investors that I know that may not be accredited or might not have $3 million to put into SpaceX, right, through any sort of platform or closed-end fund, they couldn't get in.
Right.
So we finally want to democratize this and give access to really anyone to have access to these names that are going to do great in the future.
It's great stuff. You got a hell of a track record, and this is something I'm telling you, people are going to love this. When people find out they can own SpaceX through this, you're going to do some pretty good business.
Thank you so much.
See you soon. Thanks.
Nice seeing you.
Thank you for tuning into the live stream. Well, it says XOVR now has SpaceX included. According to her, according to Fox Business, well, it is what it is. You've heard from them. If you want to invest, you can. If you don't, it is what it is. With that being said, we were just going to talk straight about Trump's hearing. Okay. First of all, let's go on to Bowen. Let's see what Bowen has to say. And then we're going to go to the show for tonight. Actually, for this morning. Double tap your screen. Subscribe to the channel. Double tap your screen for the likes.
2024 has been a year of roaring stock market gains and some high-profile company turnaround fails. Intel, Stellantis, Boeing, CVS, all taking a hit after high-profile CEO departures. We're taking a look at some of the ugliest turnaround attempts from this year. Okay, I wrote recently that Intel is the ugliest turnaround attempt of 2024. It's losing share in key markets. It's hemorrhaging cash on factory investments, and I don't see easy fixes in sight. But I want to hear about your picks. You can choose from the companies I just mentioned or from anywhere. What's the ugliest turnaround attempt of 2024, Megan?
I do think Intel has some issues. I think you're right on that one. But if I were to pick, I'd have to go with CVS. I think the potential for societal harm here is really the big issue for me. So this is a huge healthcare company. They've got exposure in obviously the pharmacies all over the country, but also things like their, CVS Caremark. They've got that, wonderful, program where it's Aetna for everyone. Health insurance, don't we all love it? None of these are doing particularly well. Their CEO recently departed. I think these are huge systemic problems that are going to take a very long time to fix. And in the meantime, you have Americans that are really struggling to get access to really affordable health care all over this country.
You keep talking about the retailization of healthcare. I don't see it happening. People go there for their flu shots, maybe. I don't see medical procedures happening in aisle 4 at the CVS. Al, your pick.
Two near and dear to my heart on your list, Stellantis and Boeing. I'll go with Boeing. Okay. I mean, 2024 was supposed to be the year they'll turn a profit, make more planes finally. And it sounds almost pejorative or like a joke, but they couldn't keep all the doors on. It'll be another year of losses. management turnover, CEO left, people leaving in the defense business, a 52-day strike. It's been about as bad as you can imagine at Boeing.
It has to be a turnaround eventually because there's no other way to get a lot of people from here to over long distances. There's two companies that provide jumbo jets to the world. So when? What do you look for as the sign to buy?
We're of the same mind. 38 737 MAX jets a month. That's what they're allowed to make by the regulators. They're not making anywhere close to that. When they start to approach 38 a month, you can say...
Where are we now? How close?
Well, after the strike, we're about 25 a month year to date.
Okay.
So when they get closer to that, you could say, all right, quality's improving. New CEO Kelly Ortberg, some of the changes are having an effect.
A ways to go there. You also mentioned Stellantis. This is the car maker.
Yep.
I have a lot of questions about Stellantis, including who in the heck is paying over $100,000 for a Jeep Grand Wagon? When did Jeep start going over $100,000? But they're struggling to sell Jeeps here in North America. What do they have to do different?
So this goes in the category of just a good old-fashioned management mess-up, right? Yeah. They jammed inventory in their dealer network. They declared record profits in 2023. That bill came due in 24. The CEO is out. Things look terrible. This is not a good one either.
Other than that, everything's okay. Ben.
Well, I'm looking at Nike. I know it wasn't on your list,
right,
but this is a company that, I was growing up. This was the shoe company, and it was that way for a very long time. And not anymore. I mean, the company has just, you go out and you don't really see the Nikes. You see Hokas, you see On, and then you see kids wearing Crocs with socks in the middle of the winter. It's all very odd.
Crocs with socks.
Crocs with socks.
That's a Dr. Seussian nightmare.
Shoes, yes. And I think part of the problem is that Nike just kind of has lost its way. Nike used to be aspirational. It used to be, I want to be like Mike. It's just do it. These days, that's not really what Nike is. They have a commercial now that shows people getting dunked on, getting beaten up, getting slammed to the mat. And it tells us that, hey, winning isn't for everyone. But it's like, if, most of us aren't going to be winning. Yeah. So, like, who's supposed to buy these shoes? And you know what's not winning? Nike stock. Nike stock is down 27% this year. It's down 21% a year over the past 3 years. The CEO is out. They brought back a guy named Elliott Hill, who did a great job before he left in 2020 when he didn't get the top job. So we'll see if there's
the message is maybe Nike shoes aren't for you, loser. Swoosh. Okay, but the stock is not cheap enough to buy then.
You have to. These things take time. We have to see how Hill does. I think actually the thing that would get the stock going is if we saw some China pickup. That would help a little bit, give it a little bit of a tailwind. But they really got to get their product, just change how the people view the product.
Let's end on something positive. Tell me quickly about a turnaround that's working.
I'm liking PayPal. PayPal was a company that everyone was saying, don't touch this thing. It's going away. It's obsolete. But you know what? It's not quite obsolete. It's finding new ways to reach customers. It's offering new services. Still at the beginning of a turnaround, but the new CEO seems to be doing a good job, and so is the stock.
Al, 20 seconds.
Don't forget about GE, but that can be a message on how long these things take. Larry Culp took over in 2018. Now the stock's a darling again.
You think
Wow. This is actually a good one. We should be doing more of these streams. We should be knowing the kind of stocks that is doing good, the ones that are bouncing back, the ones that are going to pop. We should be doing this.
Still has upside here. It looks attractively priced to you?
Yeah, I like GE Aerospace and GE Vernova, two of the three companies that spun out.
Two separate stocks you can buy now, double the fun. Al, thanks.
Chat, what do you think? We should be doing more of this. All right, this is a case issue. Let's see what time it is.
The IRS and the FBI in taxpayer money in exchange for a bribe she paid to a staffer she gave her a very large bonus. The indictment charges Ms. Fernandez-Anderson with 5 counts of wire fraud in violation of Title 18, United States Code 1343, and 1 count of theft concerning programs receiving federal funds in violation of Title 18, United States Code 666. According to the indictment that was returned by a federal grand jury earlier this week, Ms. Fernandez-Anderson was facing financial difficulty in 2023. Part of that financial difficulty stemmed from a sanction that was imposed by the State Ethics Commission of $5,000 for Ms. Fernandez-Anderson hiring immediate family members in her Boston City Council office. And in around that same time in 2023, Ms. Fernandez-Anderson, the grand jury alleges, hatched this scheme to funnel bonus payments, taxpayer money into her own pocket in the tune of approximately $7,000. Specifically, despite the fact that she was under investigation by the State Ethics Commission, Ms. Fernandez-Anderson hired another family member on her staff at Boston City Hall to handle constituent services. That staff member was related to her, but Ms. Fernandez-Anderson falsely represented to City Hall that there was no familial relationship. That is staff member A in the indictment. Ms. Fernandez-Anderson then went on to tell that staff member A that she would give that person a $13,000 bonus. That bonus of $13,000 was more than twice as much as Ms. Fernandez was paying to the rest of her staff combined in bonuses. But that supersized bonus came with a hitch. Ms. Fernandez-Anderson told staff member A that she would need to fork over $7,000 in cash back to Ms. Fernandez-Anderson. Staff member A agreed. The indictment alleges that after staff member A received the deposit of approximately $10,000 after taxes in her bank account, staff member A was directed to make cash withdrawals. And she did that in the days following the receipt of the money in her bank account. $3,000 on May 31st, 2023, $3,000 on June 5th, 2023, and $4,000 on the afternoon of Friday, June 9th, 2023. And shortly after that last cash withdrawal, Ms. Fernandez-Anderson and staff member A texted each other, and they arranged for a meetup in a bathroom in City Hall. That meeting happened in the bathroom around 4 o'clock or so on that Friday. And when they met inside that bathroom, Ms. Fernandez-Anderson put $7,000 in cash in her pocket, the grand jury alleges. All of that money was funded by the taxpayers of the city of Boston. When faced with financial hardship and that State Ethics Commission $5,000 sanction, Ms. Fernandez-Anderson chose to violate her fiduciary duty and defraud the city of Boston, the indictment alleges, rather than find a legal means to pay off that debt. When her constituents elected Ms. Fernandez-Anderson, she had a fundamental obligation to act with the utmost integrity. Public officials who line their pockets with taxpayer money erode the trust and confidence of the public in the officials who serve them. Public service is a privilege, and all of us in public service have a duty to act with integrity and fairness in all that we do. This office, for years, has been committed to rooting out public corruption and will continue to do so. We, alongside with our federal partners from the IRS and the FBI, investigate all allegations of public corruption, follow the facts and law where they lead, and we will hold people who abuse their power accountable. I now would like to ask for Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI, Steve Kelleher, to share a few comments.
Thanks, Josh. Good morning. I'm Steve Kelleher, Assistant Special Agent in charge of FBI Boston. It's like deja vu all over again. Another Boston City Councilor is accused of embracing a culture of cashing in at the expense of the public good. Earlier this morning, the FBI arrested Tanya Fernandez-Anderson at her home in Dorchester for accepting $7,000 in cash in a City Hall bathroom from a member of the staff who is also a relative. Basically, what we have here is an elected official pretending her motives were purely civic-minded. In fact, we believe she was unlawfully conspiring to enrich herself. This city councilor is accused of stealing thousands of dollars from the city through not just creative, but criminal accounting. Why and how did she do it? We believe she was facing personal financial difficulty when she decided to steal money for herself in the form of a supposed bonus she had doled out to a staff member. Well, in this Commonwealth and in this country, our elected officials work for us, not the other way around. Using public office for personal gain is a crime, plain and simple. The behavior we allege in today's indictment is a slap in the face of the hardworking taxpayers in the city of Boston who have every right to expect that the city's coffers are in good and honest hands. Nobody is picking on Tanya Fernandez-Anderson and her inner circle. We believe this is a situation of her own making. The FBI is working hard every day to battle public corruption and the corrosive damage it does to people's faith in government. We must hold public officials to high ethical standards, and we will hold them to obeying federal law. We ask anyone with knowledge of wrongdoing by public officials to call the FBI or share information online at tips.fbi.gov. My thanks to the agents, analysts, accountants, and attorneys who have worked very hard over the last year to advance this investigation. specifically FBI Boston's Public Corruption Squad, the prosecution team here at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and our colleagues at the IRS. Their continued partnership and support are greatly appreciated. I'll turn it over to the IRS for comments.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Wadika. I am the Acting Special Agent in charge for IRS Criminal Investigations Boston Field Office. I would like to begin by thanking United States Attorney Joshua Levy for hosting this press conference today. I would also like to thank and recognize the FBI's Boston Field Office for their incredible work on this investigation. IRS Criminal Investigation is committed to identifying and investigating all financial crimes, no matter how small. This is especially true for our commitment to rooting out public corruption, which is a top priority. Today, special agents with IRS Criminal Investigation, in conjunction with special agents from the FBI, have arrested Councilor Tanya Fernandez Anderson, a second-term Boston City Councilor, for defrauding the City of Boston. Elected officials are held to a higher standard. Councilors are supposed to help their constituents and provide a voice for them. Instead, Councilor Fernandez Anderson decided to put herself ahead of all those who voted for her when she orchestrated a kickback scheme to enrich herself using city funds. She lied to her staff and betrayed her constituents, all while being a strong advocate for increased accountability for public officials. No excuse could justify the theft of city funds for any purpose, whether legitimate or not. The councilor failed to recognize and adhere to the most basic of social expectations, not to lie or steal from others, especially those who put their trust into her to do what is right. Financial crimes are not a victimless crime. Every time funds are stolen at the federal, state, city, or local level, the victims are the citizens that inhabit these communities. The victims are the taxpayers, whose money was used for the enrichment of one instead of the greater good of all. Public funds are essential for funding social welfare programs, the education of our children, and ensuring our communities are kept safe. IRS Criminal Investigation uses our financial expertise to find allegation of financial crimes, thoroughly investigate it, and ensure that justice is preserved for all. We will continue to work hand in hand with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to ensure that those who break the law and take advantage of others are brought to justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
What is going to happen with staff member A? Is she cooperating with this investigation? Could she also be facing charges?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on other aspects of the investigation beyond what's in the public record right now.
So staff member A is her sister, correct?
Staff member A is identified as staff member A in the indictment.
How long was the investigation?
Well, I'm not going to comment on when the investigation began. Obviously, we're dealing with fairly recent events from the middle of last year, so it's something we've been working on for several months.
You said the indictment was handed down this week. What day?
I believe the indictment was returned yesterday. Should be at the bottom of the indictment.
And how is this going to impact her job right now?
Yeah, that's outside the purview of the Department of Justice in terms of what happens with her job. We'll proceed with the criminal case as we do with every other case. She'll have an initial appearance today, and then we'll proceed in further status conferences, discovery, and the criminal case will proceed, but we're not going to comment on her job status.
Can you comment on the amount of money, $7,000? I know there was reference to it doesn't matter how small. If you steal allegedly, then you'll be charged. But what's the impact in terms of the case going forward, in terms of sentencing? We've seen others charged with small amounts who were sentenced to 3 years in prison. So what's the impact here as it goes forward based on the amount of money here?
Yeah, so the amount of money is one factor we consider in whether to bring federal charges. The fact that it's a public official, certainly it makes the conduct more egregious that's alleged here. And I think, as you know from being in these halls for many years, Shelley, there's sentencing guidelines that generate a recommended sentence to the court, and that's driven by a number of factors, including the amount of money, but other things. There's factors for abuse of position of trust and being a leader, that type of thing. So that will all factor in to what the guidelines are and ultimately the sentence imposed by a federal judge.
Do you have any video evidence of the kickback, the alleged kickback at this point? I know there's cameras in City Hall. You mentioned about a bathroom. Can you be any more specific about where, what happened in there?
I can't be any more specific right now about the evidence that we have.
So there was a talk circulating that there was a search at City Hall of her office?
A what circulating?
A search at the counselor's office at City Hall?
Yeah, I can't comment on whether we did a search or not at City Hall.
These allegations seem eerily similar to the type of bonus and kickback seen in the Correa case. How concerned are you about this behavior being endemic in the Commonwealth?
I guess I would answer that by saying when we get tips or information about misconduct, whether it's in public corruption or other spaces, we pursue it, we investigate it. I have no information that's endemic, but I echo Assistant Special Agent in Charge Kelleher's comments that we want to receive information from the public if they have other information of this type of conduct, but I would not characterize anything as endemic at this point.
Are you seeking more information about the city councilor, and is this an ongoing investigation?
This is an ongoing investigation, and will continue. This is, as you well know, sometimes cases involve superseding indictments if there's a reason to bring additional charges.
Councilor Fernandez-Anderson was involved in like neighborhood rehabilitation groups and community groups, and I'm wondering if part of the investigation is looking into other financial transactions within those groups.
Yeah. So I'm not going to comment on what other parts of the investigation we're working on. We obviously investigated this to a point where we felt very comfortable presenting it to a grand jury, and that we had this established beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's why the charges have been filed. As to what else we're working on, I'm not going to comment on right now.
The indictment mentions that she and her staff members signed non-disclosure agreements. Is that common practice in City Hall?
We included that in the indictment because it stuck out to us as unusual and not consistent with the transparency that I think the public expects from government officials. So that's what I'll say about that.
Did the ethics investigation after the family member was hired, did that spark this investigation?
I'm not going to comment on how we get going on investigations. We get information from a variety of sources at our office, at the FBI, at IRS, and so I'm not going to get into what sparked our investigation here.
Just a couple more.
Do you have any details on the actual arrest, Dr. Brown, when she was picked up this morning, what time she was arrested? Did she say anything? And I saw the video, looked like she walked out by herself to the front door.
Yeah, I'm going to let Assistant Special in Charge Keller answer that question.
Yeah, she was taken into custody shortly after 6 o'clock this morning. She has not made any statements. She has an attorney. We haven't asked her any questions.
She walked out to the front door by herself?
Yeah, she was called out, by the agents outside. We surrounded the residence and we placed a call to her and asked her to come outside, and she did. She was taken into custody.
Was she given any special accommodation because she's a city councilor?
Absolutely not.
Can you talk about the blatantness or boldness of this bathroom exchange? Like, to do that in a city hall bathroom? Like, can you just talk about that anecdotally? Seems a little bold.
I highlighted it in my remarks because, as alleged, not only was these taxpayers' funds being stolen, but it was happening right in the building where she works. So, from my personal opinion, I think it adds the egregiousness of this conduct.
Okay. So I just went to her Instagram right now, and it says here that to all my people, District 7 constituent, about the news yesterday, you know that I am always transparent with you and that I am always available. My job is to show up and to fight for you, and I will continue to do just that, the people's work. Unfortunately, I am not able to comment on this matter at this time. As soon as I can, I will be sure to share with you. Since this news broke out, I have received a tremendous amount of prayers, support, and well wishers. I am extremely grateful for your continued faith and trust in me. Thank you. I love you, and I will continue to work hard for you. Peace and love in service to our community. Your counselor, Hania Fernandez Anderson. So that's what she's saying on Instagram. Ladies and gentlemen, this may be a little tricky. That's what she's saying on Instagram, though. And she's saying she's working for the people. And she's received so many prayers, you know. I wish I could see a video of her actually addressing it. There is a video on CBS Boston, but I'm not gonna play that one. All right. The actual video that we have for this midnight is Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe testifies before Trump assassination attempt task. That's the one we're supposed to see. So we're gonna get into right now. Thank you for tuning in. Double tap your screen. Let's get the likes up, guys. Let's get the likes up. Let's get the likes up, guys. This is the one we're finna see right now.
Of a partner at the table when we are developing that plan.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
So it says here, Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe testifies before Trump assassination attempt task. Let's see that one. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Again, on September 15th in West Palm Beach, Florida. Joining us, and so typically in Washington, we were supposed to start at 9:30, so we've moved it already back to 9:37. I guarantee you, though, that this task force was working on time every day, trying to get the answers the American people need to have. So the task force is convened today to present the American people with the facts, what went wrong, what the Secret Service is doing to address it, and most importantly, what other changes may be necessary. So the three goals to start off with, number one, to understand what went wrong on the day of the attempted assassination. We're talking about July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania. To ensure accountability and to prevent such an agency failure from ever happening again. That is a tough task because we don't know what the future holds for us. On July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, and then again on September 15th in West Palm Beach, Florida, President-elect Trump was the subject of two separate assassination attempts. Butler, Pennsylvania is not only within the district I represent, but it's also my hometown where I grew up and have fond memories of playing American Legion baseball on those grounds. I attended the July 13th rally with my family, my wife, one of my sons, and three of our grandchildren. The assassination attempt of President-elect that day has left its mark on our community and those that were in attendance that day. We lost Corey Compatore, a volunteer firefighter who was dearly missed by many. His wife, his two daughters, woke up that day with the excitement of being able to travel to Butler, which is only a few miles away from their hometown, to experience an event that they really were looking forward to. Four people were in that car that morning. That night, only three were in the car. Mr. Compatore died. Our local law enforcement agency were wrongly smeared in the media for helping with the rally security. The Secret Service Zero mission failed on July 13th. And more trust in our federal agencies was lost. But the news is not all bad. After the departure of Secret Service's former director, Kimberly Cheeto, new leadership has taken responsibility for failures. Director Rowe, thank you. And has been called out the complacency in the agency. Choosing a path of cooperation in pursuit of the truth, the Secret Service made every single employee this task force requested available for interview. The Secret Service's own mission, accountability review, is a credible self-critique and substantially consistent with the findings of the task force. When tested again with a second assassination attempt in West Palm Beach, Florida on September 15th, the Secret Service security redundancies, while not flawless, got the job done and kept President-elect a safe distance from harm. On October 5th, President-elect Trump returned to the stage in Butler, Pennsylvania with members of his own family. The differences between the planning, coordination, and execution of this event compared to July 13th were like the difference between day and night. The task force upcoming report includes a few dozen recommendations for Secret Service and its parent agency, the Department of Homeland Security, as well as Congress. In less than 5 months, the task force has conducted 46 transcribed interviews with local, state, and federal officials, participated in over a dozen briefings with relevant agencies, reviewed approximately 20,000 pages of documents, visited the site of the July 13th assassination attempt in my hometown of Butler, and the site of the September 15th assassination attempt in West Palm Beach, Florida. It also went to FBI laboratories in Quantico, Virginia, to examine the physical evidence from the July 13th attempt. This work has positioned the task force to make bipartisan determinations about exactly how the failures occurred and where the responsibility lies. At the task force hearing on September 1st, it noted three key areas of failure by Secret Service that occurred on July 13th. This included planning errors that led to confusion among local law enforcement partners, an inexplicable failure to close public access to the site where the shooter, Thomas Crooks, chose to position himself. And third, a communications and command structure that did not facilitate rapid communication. Further investigation has revealed new information shedding light on each of these failures. First, planning areas by Secret Service not only created confusion among local law enforcement partners, but also among the Secret Service agents working at the rally. In interviews with the task force, multiple agents offered uncertain and at times conflicting takes on what the duties of Secret Service personnel working in key roles for planning and execution the day the rally took place. Second, our investigation found that AGR Complex, the grounds and buildings adjacent to the rally site where the would-be assassin Thomas Crooks fired from, were not secured due to the Secret Service failure to understand and confirm key information. Interviews with Secret Service agents revealed the area was never secured because agents mistakenly believed that state and local officials planned to secure it. Secret Service never verified this charge before or during the rally. Third, communications, and I think this is really the most important. Communications and intelligence failures occurred in numerous ways, ranging from a flawed setup, agents failing to speak up about problems they observed, training issues, inadequate resources, and not having the ability to communicate with one another in the moment of the crisis. After much investigation, we found no any evidence or testimony suggesting that any Secret Service in proximity to President Trump at the rally, who might have been in a position to get him off the stage, knew that there was a suspicious or armed person on a rooftop until after shots were fired. In the course of our investigation, some interviews with Secret Service personnel included expressions of regret, while others took defiant stances blaming colleagues for their failures. Several Secret Service agents interviewed by the task force have either already left the agency or have been placed on a status called situational telework, where they are not allowed to contribute to the core duty of protection. Those agents have been left in flux, waiting to see if these fundamental leadership failures will ultimately lead to the end of their careers. It's not in our nation's or anyone's interest for the Secret Service to delay accountability decisions any longer. I strongly encourage Director Rowe to review the task force final report and act to hold those individuals responsible for the failure accountable in a way that enables the Secret Service to move forward. We are no longer under the illusion that there is still work to do in fixing these problems with the Secret Service. Every 4 years, those campaigning for our nation's highest office reach out across America to connect with the public and ask for their support. This is a fundamental principle of our democracy. On top of being responsible for protecting our nation's highest-ranking officials, their families and foreign dignitaries during a campaign season, the Secret Service must protect the candidates running for office. This greatly increases their optional tempo and pushes the resources to a limit. Today, we will discuss the lessons learned from this past campaign cycle and underscore what needs to happen moving forward. I want to thank Acting Director Rowe for being here today, and now I yield to Ranking Member Crow for his opening comments.
Good morning. I would like to thank the chairman and the members of this task force, and perhaps most importantly, the bipartisan staff for their incredible hard work over the last 5 months. I would also like to thank Acting Director Rowe for joining us here today for this important hearing. Political violence has no place in this country, and that is why the bipartisan work of this task force has been so critical. On July 24th, just days after the attempt on Donald Trump's life, the House of Representatives unanimously passed a resolution establishing this task force. Our mandate has been to investigate the facts and circumstances leading up to the assassination attempts in Butler, Pennsylvania and West Palm Beach, Florida, to understand how these attacks happened and how to prevent a similar incident from ever happening again. But we also had another mandate, another unofficial mandate, and that was to come together as Democrats and Republicans and to show the nation that we can undertake the work of conducting an investigation, of uncovering the truth, and submitting a bipartisan report telling that story. And that is what we have done. In less than 5 months, the task force has done an outstanding amount of work to accomplish its mission. We received numerous briefings with federal agencies, including the Secret Service, the FBI, and ATF, visited the site of the first assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, and the site of the second attempt in West Palm Beach, Florida, held 46 transcribed interviews with federal, state, and local law enforcement officials, reviewed more than 18,000 pages of documents in response to requests for information to federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, published an initial interim report laying out the task force's initial findings to ensure the American people remained updated on our work, held a public hearing with local and state law enforcement officials and former Secret Service agent who provided additional understanding of what went wrong in Butler. We visited the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia to review evidence from July 13th, and today we are holding our final hearing with Secret Service Acting Director Rowe, which will be immediately followed by a business meeting to approve our final report. Although we received more cooperation from some federal agencies than others, we have been able to firmly establish the facts leading up to and on the days of both assassination attempts, and to make recommendations that will help prevent a tragedy like the one in Butler from happening again. We have also critically worked in an overwhelmingly bipartisan manner to ensure that the American people have the answers they deserve. I am proud of this process and the work that we have done. Again, I would like to thank the members of this task force for their diligence, cooperation, and dedication to stopping political violence in the United States in its tracks. I look forward to a productive conversation today with Acting Director Rowe about what the Secret Service and Congress can continue to do to protect our nation's most senior leaders. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Crow. I do. I want to just take a moment before we ask the director to swear in. I think when we look at what we were able to do, 13 members of Congress, right? 7 Republicans and 6 Democrats. We never identified as what our politics were about or what party we belonged to. What we identified as a group that was going to try to find to get the answers to restore the faith and trust and confidence that the American people have to have, not only in this institution, but us. And the other thing is, you've already mentioned it, 30 staff members have worked tirelessly since that creation. And while we weren't able to be here because we're in primaries and we're in general elections and we're running all over the country, they never left. They stayed and they did all the work. So I can't tell you how proud I am of this group. They're the ones that should get all the credit. We get the chance to sit here. We'll take the blame, but I think I'd rather take the blame and give others the credit for the success. So let's go ahead and move forward. But I want to thank the staff, everybody that's here today. You guys did one heck of a job. Thank you for your dedication. Now we're going to introduce our witness. Today we are joined by Mr. Ronald L. Rowe, Jr., Acting Director, U.S. Secret Service. Director, we appreciate you being here today. Now, will you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witness answered in the affirmative. I now recognize Mr. Rowe for his 5-minute opening remarks. Director, I think we've talked about this. We're going to be flexible on the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Chairman Kelly, Ranking Member Crow, and distinguished members of the task force. I appreciate the efforts of this task force, and I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. July 13th was a failure of the Secret Service to adequately secure the Butler Farm Show site and protect President-elect Trump. That abject failure underscored critical gaps in Secret Service operations, and I recognize that we did not meet the expectations of the American public, Congress, and our protectees. And they rightly have that idea based on how we performed. President-elect Trump was wounded. A cowardly and despicable act killed 1 person and critically injured 2 others. And I join you and all Americans in condemning the horrific assault on President-elect Trump, Corey Comparator, James Copenhaver, and David Dutch. And I extend my deepest sympathies to the Comparator family. Since becoming acting director, I've worked tirelessly to address what I believe are shared goals with the task force to understand what went wrong on the day of the attempted assassination, to ensure accountability, to prevent such a failure from ever happening again. The recently completed mission assurance inquiry thoroughly investigated the specific actions and inactions that led to the assassination attempt. 4 areas of deficiencies were identified: communications, protective advance processes, command and control processes, and coordination with external entities. The mission assurance inquiry identified failures by multiple employees that warrant disciplinary action. The quality of the advance work and preparation for the Butler Farm Show visit absolutely did not meet the expected standards of this agency. Let me be clear. There will be accountability, and that accountability is occurring. It is an extensive review that requires time to ensure due process. And the pace of this process, quite frankly, it does frustrate me. But it is essential that we recognize the gravity of our failure. I personally carry the weight of knowing that we almost lost a protectee, and our failure cost a father and husband his life. I have reflected extensively on the agency's substandard performance during the advance for the Butler rally. I have implemented numerous systemic and strategic changes to prevent these failures from ever happening again. It has been my singular focus to bring much-needed reform to the Secret Service, to be an agent of change, to challenge previous assumptions, and while doing so, also ensuring that the brave men and women of the Secret Service have the resources, leadership, and assets that they need to be successful in carrying out our protective mission. A full list of actions is itemized in my prepared testimony, but these changes have included providing the highest levels of Secret Service protection to President-elect Trump throughout the remainder of the presidential campaign, expanding the use of unmanned aerial systems for aerial observation at venues, expanding the use of counter-unmanned aerial systems technologies to mitigate the use of a UAS as a kinetic attack vector, expanding the use of ballistic countermeasures at Secret Service-protected campaign sites, a directive to mandate unified command in a singular location for all protective sites, something that was not done on July 13th in Butler. We are operating in a heightened threat environment with expanding protection requirements, and this requires a shift in the Secret Service's levels of protection, readiness, and sustainability. The paradigm shift focuses on elevating protection, prioritizing training, strengthening our workforce, and increasing accountability. The elevation of protective operations ties directly to how the work performed by special agents in the field directly relates to our protective mission. The field officers serve a critical role in everything we do operationally, to include protection, protective intelligence investigations, and enforcement operations, among many other important responsibilities. Recognizing how operationally integrated that field offices are, I am directing an organizational change to shift the Office of Investigations to the Office of Field Operations. This is not simply a semantic change. Establishing the Office of Field Operations is an opportunity to reset our thinking and perspective about the role field offices play in protection, and to enhance our operational effectiveness by better leveraging field offices to support, enable, and inform protection and protective activities. It is also my intention to reconstitute the Secret Service's culture such that training is routine and expected. That was how it was done when I was operational on the Presidential Protective Division, and somehow along the way, we became disproportionately operational in comparison to time allocated for training. As I have publicly stated, the Secret Service historically has had to manage its operations by doing more with less. That is not consistent with achieving a no-fail mission. And since becoming acting director, I've made it my priority to eliminate the do more with less mindset, which has had a long-term degrading effect on our workforce and our protective operations. The Secret Service is making progress on this thanks to Congress. The continuing resolution, which was passed in September, appropriated additional funding to the Secret Service in FY 2025 to support immediate requirements associated with protective operations. I greatly appreciate the efforts of Congress and numerous staff members in making that supplemental a reality. The world is a dangerous place. The responsibilities of the Secret Service are critical to the national security of the United States. It is important that decision makers fully recognize and appreciate the vital role and significance of the Secret Service in our nation's security. The terrorist, the nation-state actor, the sniper, the lone gunman, the lone wolf gunman, they must be lucky once. But the men and women of the Secret Service must be perfect every time. That may not be fair, but that's the world in which we operate in. Thankfully, Congress has responded to the immediate challenges facing the Secret Service, and for that we are grateful. Our agency is not defined by one failure, but by our ability to learn from mistakes, to hold ourselves accountable, then learn, evolve, and continue striving for excellence. After the failure of July 13th, the dedicated men and women of the Secret Service rose to the occasion. In the face of immense pressure and adversity, they answered a call to duty with unwavering resolve. And I want to express my gratitude for the extraordinary dedication and hard work of our special agents, uniformed division officers, mission support personnel. They all persevered when the demands of the mission surpassed anything they or their families have ever been asked to take on. Their commitment to the mission, even under such challenging circumstances, is nothing short of inspiring. I am truly honored to serve alongside such a remarkable group of individuals. Mr. Chairman, I will submit the remainder of my statement for the record, and I look forward to answering the questions of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rowe. I'm now going to recognize myself for 5 minutes. First of all, I want to thank you for your testimony. Of all the areas the Secret Service reviewed after July 13th, what do you think was the most concerning failure of that day, looking back on it? And had you been the one developing the game plan, what different moves would you have made strategically to ensure that it was a safe and secure area?
So I think what is glaring to me is the failure to recognize the significance of the AGR building, to recognize the significance of proximity to what was perceived to be the middle perimeter of the site. The lack of recognizing that, the failure to effectively communicate, as you stated, and some of the findings of the task force, to effectively communicate to local law enforcement that we need to have uniform presence out here, that we shouldn't have people that close, unscreened, on the curtilage of our site, not having better line of sight mitigation, having something scrim along that fence line that was to the 3 o'clock, having uniformed law enforcement presence out there, having special attention measures by those law enforcement officers. That, to me, is glaring. And those are basic tenets, fundamentals of what advance teams are supposed to identify. They are supposed to identify hazards, risks, and then mitigate those risks effectively, either by using law enforcement and coordinating assets, or taking matters and making sure that it is mitigated and that risk is taken out of play. We did not do that on the 13th. Post-July 13th, there was a renewed focus on that, making sure that supervisors were engaged, that we provided assets, that we had enabling UAS, platforms in the air. That was the difference on October 5th that you saw with your own eyes, sir.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your testimony. Of all the people that have weighed in on this, myself, my wife, 3 of my grandchildren, and 1 of my sons were there. I was on the grounds both on July 13th and October 5th. I want to reiterate what I said earlier. The difference is the difference between day and night. And my concern was, from the day the site was selected to when it was turned over to Secret Service, somehow that exchange, for whatever reason, the ability to coordinate the efforts between local law enforcement and federal agencies just seemed to be casual. I don't think local law enforcement knew enough about what was expected of them. I think that day they were doing what they thought they were supposed to do. And then afterwards, it's like, well, we should have communicated better. And I've got to tell you, from the beginning, I always was trying to figure out why two different command centers, and why weren't the two command centers even able to communicate with each other? Because at the end of the day, it's about communication. And as I've already said, we shouldn't have waited till 11 minutes after 6 that day to determine that we couldn't communicate. So going forward, you've already made some changes, and I think when you look at October the 5th, and to me, when I walked on the grounds that day, I felt like I was in the safest place in the world. The awareness of that, when you look back at it, and you were not in charge at that time on July 13th, but afterwards, the attention to detail that you put into effect on October the 5th, if you can share with us what we should do going forward, is there a protocol? Is there an ability to communicate? Is there an ability then to draw not only the federal agencies in, but also local agencies, because you can't cover the whole thing by yourselves. You just don't have enough personnel. You don't have enough assets. Going forward, I know you've already initiated plans like that. Just share a few of those with us, please.
Sure. So we've actually now we have done some organizational changes as well. I've created an aviation unit, right? So that's making sure that we're putting out those drones up in the sky to give us visibility. If we don't have a drone, or if for whatever reason a state or local wants to fly a drone, we're going to allow them to fly that drone as well. The whole point is to get, and this is what we did not have on July 13th, and it's one common operating picture. On October the 5th, we knew exactly where every law enforcement officer was because they were using a Blue Force tracker. We have that same platform. So having that domain awareness now moving forward at our protected sites, that is a change that we are operationalizing. We did this as part of our paradigm shift. We have to look at the threat and what that threat is. And our security model is based on that threat. And we have to prepare every day that there is somebody out there who's there to do harm. And that means that we have to communicate that to our state and local officers, and they are just as much of a partner at the table when we are developing that plan.
Okay, thank you. Listen, we could go on for a long time back and forth of what was there. I just will reiterate it. There is only one person on this panel in this room, unless other people came down from Butler, that was there that day. I was there that day. It was really messed up. I couldn't understand at all what was going on because it was unlike any other rally that I'd ever attended. I do know that you have so many protectees that are out there. The size and scope of your responsibility is beyond what the average American would understand. And I think by having these hearings, people are going to understand what is the purpose of the investment, why do we do it, and who all is it we're trying to protect. At this time, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Crow. It's been wonderful working with him, and his military background exceeds anything I ever knew. So, Representative Crow, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Acting Director, I wanted to actually pick up on that last line of questioning about the lack of a common operational picture and your reference to a Blue Force tracker. I mean, Blue Force trackers is something that I used a lot when I was a ranger in the military, because what we know is that when you're operating in a complex environment and you have multiple levels of agencies, you have local, state, federal, DOD assets, folks who don't always necessarily train and work together, but they're thrown together for a task force or a specific mission, and they're sometimes operating across vast distances and different geography, that common operational picture, right? One place where all communications flow, where there's unified command, where everyone can see where everyone else is, they can share information in real time, that is essential, right? In Afghanistan, for example, that's what we had. We were oftentimes working with FBI, intelligence agencies, different countries across hundreds of kilometers in instances, but we had a platform, an actual physical platform that served as a virtual command post. So it doesn't matter where you were or who you were, you could look at that and see where everybody else was and share information. And it's just wild to me that in 2024, our nation's premier law enforcement agency on July 13th was using text messages on their personal cell phones, literally sending emails in some cases to deliver real-time information, and scribbling messages on paper and not using a system. So it's good to hear that you've implemented that in part on October 5th and going forward, but can you tell me, I mean, are you looking into more advanced systems and platforms that I know exist on the DoD side? I know DoD has these. Are you looking into these? Are you developing this? And can you commit today to pursuing and implementing that level of technology?
I will commit to that, Ranking Member, and we are actually looking at this. The whole basis of giving that domain awareness and superiority is exactly what you just described. And what my experience as a National Special Security Event Coordinator in 2016, I was a coordinator for the RNC in Cleveland. When the Secret Service goes into planning for a National Special Security Event, we do this. We do exactly what it's called a multi-agency coordinating center. We have an incident log. We have a Blue Force tracker. We know where our partners are. We should be able to do this, and we can do this on a smaller scale. And so I've taken entities, for example, our radio operations, I've taken them out of a line of business directorate, and I've put them more closely aligned to an operational entity. And that same operational entity, our technical security division, they also handle our cameras, our sensors, our aviation. So it's all about making sure that we're looking at things in DoD world, and we rely heavily on DoD for a lot of our overseas operations. And so they are already down the road with a lot of stuff, and we are leveraging those partnerships and leveraging some of the other commercially available off-the-shelf stuff that's available right now, that is FedRAMP, that we can bring it inside our system. We are doing that work right now, and there's about 2 or 3 different systems that we're looking at right now, and one of them is a DoD system.
Thank you. The last question I wanted to address was this issue of culture. And I'm struck by the fact that there were numerous things that occurred on July 13th, and I'll just list some examples. One was the counter-UAS operator did not have formal training on that system, and when it didn't operate, they just simply went without it being raised to anyone else's awareness. And the agent responsible for emplacing the counter sniper team placed the team that had responsibility for the sector that included the AGR rooftop, which is where the gunman fired from, placed it in a location where there was a tree blocking substantial portions of that rooftop, yet nobody said anything. When I was in the Army, there was this culture and expectation that when you were on a mission or in a training range, that anybody could say something at any time if they saw a safety risk. It's the old adage, if you see something, say something, right? So a private could stop a training mission or even a real mission if there was a life and safety issue. Commercial pilots have the same thing, that if you're in the cockpit, anybody can say, hey, there's a problem to the captain or stop something from happening. I'm struck by the lack of that culture on July 13th, that if you're a counter sniper and you've been placed in a position that actually doesn't allow you to see entire sectors of the position that you're responsible for, why aren't people saying something? And it happened on numerous occasions. So can you speak to that culture and how you change that culture so that folks speak up and everybody's empowered to make necessary changes on the spot if they need to?
Sure. So first, it starts with training, a retraining, right? A re-education of folks. We have to do that. Secondly, we also have to make sure that we are more regularly doing hot washes, after actions on this. So one of the organizational changes, I've directed the Office of Protective Operations to initiate and stand up almost an auditing capability, to regularly send out folks to evaluate how we're doing, and also share findings with our Office of Training. What we don't want to do is we want people to understand, hey, we want to get better. We're not here to take punitive action against people just to gig you for something. No, we want to make the mission better. We want to do that. We do this, again, in our National Special Security Event construct. It's in policy that coordinator has to do an after-action report. We do some of these things informally, but we have to do this regularly. We have to do after-action reports, and we have to retrain our folks to say, it's okay to see something and say, hey, wait a minute, why don't we have that hallway covered? I will tell you that my time as a full-time agent on the President's detail, that was the culture. I don't know where we lost that. But you were always empowered. If there was 31 post standers on that site, there were 31 different site agents. And you had a shared collective responsibility, exactly what you're talking about, for the integrity of that site. We have to get back to that. And I think training, which touches everything from the cradle of your career all the way to the end of your career, training is where we need to make that investment.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more and appreciate that answer. I yield back.
Thank you. Now recognize Representative Joyce from Ohio for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly. And first, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for your, Ranking Member Crow, for the fair and honest way in which you've handled this matter, and to the distinguished colleagues I have here on this committee for their use of their background. Since my background seems to be in appropriations, and I happen to have chaired the Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee in 24, I'm pretty familiar with your budget.
Yes, sir.
And so I think I want to go down that lane with you. In the September CR, Congress approved $231 million in supplemental funding for the agency led up to the 24 election in November. Acting Director, could you describe specifically how that funding was used? How did you prioritize where to allocate it, and how those decisions will impact the longer-term resource needs of the agency?
Sure. So there were immediate needs that we used a portion of that money for. So we are submitting regular reports back to the Appropriations Committee. So they are closely tracking this, and we see this as an opportunity to prove that we can fiscally spend this money in a very responsible way. Those immediate needs were, following July 13th, we made a request to the Department of Defense for increased air mobility support. That's a reimbursable agreement that we have with them. We increased our reimbursable agreements with other partner agencies to fill some personnel gaps that we had. Tactical operators from other agencies from across the department, other support when it came to counter UAS, support for screening with the TSA. So as we brought up the president-elect and the vice president, we brought them up to the highest levels of Secret Service protection, same level as the president. And so we needed that money for additional reimbursable agreements, requests for assistance that we have with other agencies. We've also started moving money out to acquire more materials that we needed. As we started to put more assets out on the road, classified assets, ballistic assets, now the wear and tear on that is going to increase. So now we have to make sure that we can acquire more and put more money down on contracts so that as we are going to now go through the service life of these materials, we have to be able to replenish them and replenish them quickly. So some of these are long lead items. So that money has been very, very helpful to us in making sure that we can address our immediate needs.
Great. In your written testimony for this hearing, you referenced that one of the practices after taking over the agency has been realigning agency technology programs with the appropriate operational entities across the Secret Service with the goal of effectively leveraging internal research and the development of emerging technologies. Director O, could you provide additional detail on what has been included in that process, and has the DHS been helpful to your agency in pursuing technological modernization efforts? Have you worked with the Science and Technology Directorate or any of the DHS components to evaluate available technologies already being used by the department or any recent developments in these emerging technologies?
Yes, we have, Congressman. So S&T has been very helpful to us with our technical security. We actually use some of their money to do some sandbox testing of things that we're looking at. Many, many years ago, we had an Office of Protective Research, and that office did a lot of R&D, did a lot of evaluation of things. There was a reorganization more than a decade ago, and that research element within the Secret Service kind of went away. It was ad hoc. We often relied on other partners, DoD, for example, to do a lot of research, DARPA and other entities. One of the things that I wanted to do was to create our own in-house ability to do applied research. so that we are working with other agencies formally, like S&T, like DARPA, like others, in the military that are operationalizing a lot of technologies. And so one of the things that we've done, and it's, we have, and one of the things I'm trying to do is put the secret back in the Secret Service, but there's been media coverage of this, so I'll talk about it. Right now at Mar-a-Lago, we've started using a sensor array, an autonomous robot that's out there walking the seawall right now. It has a sensor package. We will use it at sites. We've started using it. And those are the types of technologies that have been out there, that have been in DoD world for years. We need to start leveraging those resources. And so the use of the autonomous canines down there right now is just one example of that.
I'm glad to hear that. I was disheartened to hear what some of the things that were brought up before about the failure of communication. I thought after 9/11 we cured that and we'd have uniform platforms, and all law enforcement, especially at activities such as the ones that Secret Service are involved in, are in communication all the time. So I'm glad to know that you're at least using these funds to try to progress the integrity of your communication systems network-wide. Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Joyce. Also I recognize right now Representative Correa from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you and our ranking member, Crow, for having these important hearings today. And Director Rowe, I want to thank you for the good job you've done in the very limited time that you've had being where you're at. I want to talk a little bit, sir, about culture, morale, and turnover. When you think about the Secret Service, you're talking about the elite, the best of the best. We've all watched those movies on TV. Secret Service agents take bullets for candidates. You're kind of the guardians of democracy. You make sure that it's the...
This guy is too funny. He said we've watched movie on TV. Secret Service agent take bullets. Bro.
votes, the voters are not an assassin's bullet that determine the outcome of elections in this country. And yet we hear that agents are demoralized, overworked, exhausted. 2022, 2023, largest turnover in decades in the Secret Service. And today, 60% of your agents have less than 10 years experience. 30% of your agents have less than 5 years experience. You got a short runway here to get up and running. How can we make Secret Service officers proud again? Get their morale up again. All of us have heard
How can we make Secret Service great again?
about those crazy parties in Colombia and other places that are really not deserving of a Secret Service reputation. How do we turn that ship around, sir?
Yes, sir. So we actually have really turned the tide on our hiring. I will tell you, our applications are up. The one thing that...
And I want to say that's not only your problem, because we've stepped up, given you $231 million in the latest CR. So what else can we do? How can we fix this?
Yeah. So we closed out FY24 on the plus side, first time for a net gain, over 200 agents, around 200 agents or so. We've increased our net, and we've been able to hang on to our veteran agents. Part of that is by giving them a retention incentive, which we just rolled out now. We're able to...
When you say hold on to them, is that because people are, you got retirements coming up, or is it people just want to leave the agency?
I think part of it is the workload, right? And I think what will alleviate that workload is bringing more in.
Okay.
So right now, we have about 500 agents in various states of training between now and March. We are going to onboard another 400 by June, and we're going to onboard 200 uniform division officers by June. We are on pace right now to hire 650 special agents and 350 uniform division officers. So being able to retain the workforce that we have and bring on more, we're going to make steady gains. Because when I look at what we have ahead of us in 28, another presidential campaign, an incumbent who's not going to be out there, who's not seeking office, but is probably going to be out there campaigning. It's going to be a tough year in 28.
The spirit, the core. The spirit, the core. Are these new agents proud to be in the Secret Service? Do they know it's an honor to serve?
They do. When I speak with them prior to when they graduate, we have a very candid conversation, and then I explain to them. Others.
So we're essentially bringing in more folks, reducing their workload, make sure they get plenty of sleep, and they're on the job.
True, and we're also going after with a targeted recruitment. We're trying to get people from the military, from law enforcement, with specialized skills, special operations experience, and bringing them in, and then having them join the ranks of our special operations division. So we're basically taking a multifaceted approach to build our ranks. And those folks, when they join, they're proud. That's one of the proudest days of their life, when I hand them that commission book and badge. And I explain to them that they have an obligation, not for the people that they protect, but for also the people that came before them, that paved the way, and the people that will come after them.
Director Rowe, I've got about a minute left.
Sure.
Last question for you. Same question I've asked before. Who's in charge? Okay. If you're in a place, a site where you're going to have a rally, campaign rally, and the Secret Service believes this is not a safe place, I don't get a good feeling about holding this rally here, and the campaign says, no, we're going to have the rally here. Who's in charge? Who wins that argument?
Listen, ultimately, it is the Secret Service responsible for creating that safe environment.
That's not my question. If that environment is not completely safe, do you have veto power over the decision to hold that rally at that place?
We do, and we do have those conversations with staff.
So you can tell them, you're not going to have the rally here, you got to move somewhere else.
We do that, yes.
Just want to make clear, so you can do that, you have that power.
We do, and it is a conversation. They have the same objective. They want to keep their protection.
Because that's not what I've heard before, but I will take your word for it now, and we'll discuss it further later on.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman, I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now to recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, former sheriff, maybe still sheriff, the only member of law enforcement that sits on this panel. Mr. Higgins, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was a captain in the sheriff's office, but I appreciate the promotion. Mr. Director, I appreciate your responsiveness to my personal outreaches to you in the months that we've looked into this. You have been accessible, and you helped me with some ballistics investigations that I was working on. You helped me personally, and over the course of the last several months, I've come to have a high degree of confidence that you are very focused on making the necessary adjustments to culture and policy and technology capabilities within the Secret Service in order to mitigate against threat at a heightened level as we move deeper into the 21st century. I think you have stepped into a difficult chair at a time of incredible challenge, and you've done so with quite courageously. And I say again, you've been very accessible. That's important to members of Congress, because when we feel like we're closed out from the executives that we are efforting to work with and to provide appropriate oversight, we don't appreciate that. So you're to be commended, I believe, good sir, for the character that you've shown in stepping into your chair at a difficult time and in the way you have interacted with Congress. So you stated that we are, quote, living in a state of heightened threat. I agree, and I would ask you to compare that to how we balance that with freedom as it relates to the Secret Service's particular mission of protecting protectees or VIPs. We do not expect nor want to live in in a prison state. Some of my colleagues mentioned is it not completely safe? Let me say there's no such thing as completely safe. You have to mitigate against threat. And you mentioned 2 levels of failure. I'm going to ask you to address one of them, which I concur with. You mentioned the AGR building proximity and communications failures. So I'm going to shift to communications failures on J13 and ask you to address what you have done to respond to the failure to deliver local radios as provided by Butler County ESU, set aside for the Secret Service that were never retrieved. You had isolated assets on rooftops that had no direct radio communication other than the delay of through their command post and their cell phones, but it would have been very easy for them to have a local radio up on the roof. That didn't happen. That cost seconds and impacted the results of the entire day. So what have you done to address that?
So we've implemented a PACE, primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency, and also making sure that, for example, the snipers, our counter snipers and local snipers are actually co-located. So that's to cut down on that, to make sure that they are standing next to each other so that there is clarity of communication between them. And then also, if exchanging radios and making sure that we have their radio and can hear what they say in clear communications.
Yes, sir. So sharing radios was part of your pre-mission plan for Butler on J13. So the failure to execute the pre-mission plan is impacted us here. You actually had the planning in place, but it wasn't executed on that day. We would see that. A reasonable man would see that as a failure of on-site leadership to follow through with the agreed-to plan. How are you addressing that within the culture and the policies of the Secret Service to make certain that something like that does not happen again? And I'll yield the remainder of my time for your answer.
Sure. So the Office of Protective Operations and our Office of Field Operations now, that is something that they ensure that we have that either shared incident command posts, and then where we have partners with Special Operations Division entities that are supporting us, that there is somebody with us, and we either have their radio or they are with us, and we are testing those communications in advance to make sure that they are rock solid.
Thank you for your clarification on that very important topic of radio communications. Good sir, I appreciate you being here. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We now recognize Representative Dean from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes of questions.
Mr. Chair, if I may, can I introduce some articles into the record at this time?
Certainly.
First one, an exodus of agents left the Secret Service unprepared, New York Times. Second one, more high-ranking officials in Secret Service stepping down, CNN. Acting Service Director responds to critical new reports about security failures, NBC News. Agency in crisis, NBC News. And final one, Secret Service touts protection improvements as election looms. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize Representative Dean from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly. And I want to personally thank you and Ranking Member Crow for how you have conducted this task force with the seriousness and the nonpartisanship that you brought to it. I also do want to echo the thanks to the staff, the extraordinary work of this bipartisan staff over these many weeks and months. And I want to acknowledge the tragedy that was July 13th. I thank you, Director Rowe, and all of your talented agents for so seriously looking at what failed. And I appreciate that you used immediately in your testimony the words that July 13th was a failure. It absolutely was. And I'm thankful to you for not trying to fog it over with some euphemism, some opacity that would not tell the American public what they need to know, what Congress needs to know in order to support the Secret Service to do your mission of no fail. So I thank you for that. I want to talk as quickly as I can around advanced pre-planning, then the day of, and then line of sight and snipers, counter sniper by Secret Service as well as local ESUs. So, for example, at the last hearing, I had the chance to talk with Butler Township Police Department Patrolman Drew Blasco. He testified that during the July 11th walkthrough, he told 3 Secret Service agents from the Pittsburgh field office and the Donald Trump detail that the AGR complex was a vulnerability. Some of the vulnerabilities he spoke about was the ability of people to get on the ground. I don't think he spoke specifically as to the roof, but the fence line, that chain link fence line over to the fairgrounds, that it was see-through, frankly, and the opacity, that the failure of making that opaque. There was, I think, some discussion of vehicles, put some vehicles along there, ag vehicles or something. So my question is, I know that the Secret Service has testified that they don't remember those conversations. Did the Secret Service discuss the vulnerability with local police or anybody as to the AGR complex, that fence line, the property itself?
Congresswoman, what I can tell you is based on what my mission assurance inquiry has found is I cannot find a written communication where the AGR building was discussed. To me, that is glaring. That's a problem. It should have been identified. When I traveled there,
Excuse me, I'm testing.
a day after I was named as the acting, and as I'm walking around, and when I went up on the roof, and I'm looking at the proximity to the site, I was taken aback by the fact that that was not secured. So my answer to you is I don't have a written record of that.
And so in the future, would those kinds of vulnerabilities be written down? I mean, they can be verbaled, but at some point, somebody should be taking notes, and that leads me to my second set of questions, which is the day of. What happens when Secret Service comes to the site and they see these vulnerabilities, that transparent fence line, a property completely unprotected, so that people could walk through, get closer to the stage, to
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. Shout out to mobile app. Shout out to Major J. You know what time it is, Major J. It is what it is, man. We're just having a good time. You don't have to make it all that. Okay, just come on. Yeah. So mobile app says, let's hope Secret Service has learned a valuable lesson, and you don't spend third string bench warmers to protect one of the preeminent heads of state on the planet. Well, you're right, bro. Especially if they are about 5'2". Did you mean 6'2"?
the president, than those who had to wait in line to go through magnetometers. Who is in charge when you get on the property to say, we got a problem over here on the left-hand side?
Yes. So we are clarifying the policy about who is in charge. And the current policy states that the advance team is responsible under the direction of the field office SAC. That's in policy, that they are supposed to identify risks and mitigate them.
But is there sort of a tick-tock where you say, okay, we're on the property, that we've got the president coming in, and have we checked all the boxes in terms of the protection of this space?
As a good site agent, you should be there when the site is being built, things are being placed, and then if things are not where they should be or where you thought they should be, it should be escalated up to the detail second supervisor who arrives ahead of the protectee, or there is a mechanism. It was not exercised in this situation.
Okay, and then I know my time's running out. Two quick things. The failure to coordinate with Butler and Beaver ESUs, the emergency services units. One was up on a rooftop across the way, the other inside the AGR building. That's a baffling miscommunication to me, a failure of direction for them. And I want to end with this, which is where I began. When Ranking Member Crow and Chairman Kelly separately called me about serving on this task force, I was struck by the final thing that the chairman said to me in terms of our mission here. It is, of course, to identify the failures, to identify what Congress can do to strengthen the resources you need. but it is ultimately to make sure we can restore faith in institutions as essential as the Secret Service. So that is our ultimate mission here. And of course, to protect lives. The fact that we lost Mr. Comparator, 2 others grievously injured, others traumatized, unable to, with joy, go participate in our political system without fear of violence against candidates, protectees, or themselves. We have to restore faith in institutions like yours. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Dean. I'm now going to recognize the Chairman of Homeland Security, Representative Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly, and I want to commend you and the ranking member Crow, and the task force staff for the hard work that they put into investigating this critical security failure that led to the assassination attempt that wounded President Trump and 2 rally attendees in Butler and tragically took the life of Corey Comparator. The Secret Service has a zero-fail mission. July 13th was the closest that a would-be assassin has come to killing a current or former president since 1981. President-elect Trump escaped death by millimeters. As this task force has discovered in the course of its thorough investigation, critical errors in the planning and the operations for the July 13th rally allowed a lone gunman to open fire at President Trump and rally attendees. These security failures reveal the need for significant reform at both the tactical and agency-wide level to correct these vulnerabilities and enhance the Secret Service's ability to carry out its protective mission. I do want to thank the acting director. Right after the first attempt at Butler, I think that next Monday, the Committee on Homeland Security was standing on the site. And at that point, the then director had never even been to the site. I'm not sure she ever got to the site before resigning, but within a day of what happened in Florida, you were there. So I appreciate the delta in leadership there. We appreciate the hard work and bravery of the men and women of the Secret Service who have served tirelessly during a busy election season, and it is our hope that this investigation leads to a Secret Service that is stronger and better prepared for its mission. Obviously, the biggest failure, you brought it up, was the AGR building, the failure to the line of sight issues that were related to that. What's specific to that failure, the miss of that risk? I mean, that a basic training private in infantry would know about 360-degree security. What specifically have you done to make sure that never happens again?
Yes, sir. So one, with this paradigm shift, going with the threat model and looking at the fact that we have to be able to provide the highest levels of protection to any of our protectees based on that threat. That means that we bring the full resources of what the Secret Service has. Our Special Operations Division operators, which consists of our counter-snipers, our counter-assault team members, and other members, and other entities within the SOD. So by shifting this paradigm to making sure that those assets are available so that when site agents are out there, they actually they don't have this, well, I'll never request this because it's not going to get approved. No, actually, what I'm telling you, if you have a vulnerability that you've identified, make the request, because we are gearing up now to put everything we have to keep all of our protectees safe, because we have to be based on mitigating a threat.
It seems almost to me like it was lackadaisical. I mean, it's hard to fathom that someone would say, we don't need to cover this. And the communications issues with the local law enforcement.
I'm not gonna cap. Like, I'm never gonna cap. This guy right here, it seems like he has more tactical experience than the lady that was there before. He's speaking with some experience. He's speaking with so much articulation, like he knows exactly how to do his job. And I can appreciate that.
Enforcement. I asked the question when they came before the committee recently, when everybody showed up on the day, was there a check-in? And there were law enforcement agencies that had never even talked to Secret Service that day. I mean, these are really basic things. And you would think they would know to do those kinds of things. So it speaks of apathy or complacency that is really unacceptable in an organization like the Secret Service. You know, one of my questions to you is, you know, the level of the failure. It seems unfathomable. The internal policies that weren't adhered to, the failure to mitigate very obvious risks. It speaks to a culture that, you know, lack of attention to details, lack of sense of urgency, complacency. I mean, these are leadership, these are command climate issues. What is the command climate of the Secret Service? That's the thing that concerns me the most. When I reported to the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment commander to be their doctor, right? At that point in my life, I was 38 years old. I had graduated from West Point Ranger School, commanded in the 82nd Airborne Division, an infantry company. I had a master's in systems information. I had a medical degree, top of my med school class, and I wondered if I was good enough to be on that team. That's what I'm talking about, elite culture where everybody comes to work every friggin' day saying, I will do everything I can to make sure I don't fail. And I'll tell you, going to war, I didn't give a shit if I died. What I didn't want to do was fail. But your guys showed up that day and didn't give a shit. There was apathy and complacency, period. And that's your mission now. I appreciate all the systems and the technology that everybody else has asked about. But this is a leadership issue. This is a command climate issue, a culture issue. Can you make a few comments about what you're doing to fix the command climate at the Secret Service?
Yes, sir. So we are reorganizing and reimagining this organization. That includes making sure that we are developing a leadership development program so that we are touching people at the GS-13 level, which is right before, the equivalent of like a captain, touching them before they get promotion to 14. And we are going to do that. And I just met with the Naval Postgraduate School yesterday. I graduated from the Executive Leaders Program at Monterey. I think it's a worthy program. We need to hit people and identify leaders earlier on, besides just saying, well, they've been here for 18 years, let's make them a GS-15.
Good.
That's what we have to get to.
Good. I yield.
Thank you, Chairman. Now I'm going to recognize Representative Houlihan from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for your leadership as well, Ranking Member Crow, and to all of the staff members who did all of the work that has produced this really important set of recommendations and findings. I thank you as well. Thank you, Acting Director Rowe, too, for the conversation today. I have two lines of questions, and I am, frankly, going to focus on some of the technology that I think is essential for us to be able to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again. For roughly 11 minutes on July 13th, Mr. Crooks was able to fly a drone near the site of the Butler rally. The Secret Service equipment, as we all know now, that could have tracked it perhaps back to its origin wasn't functioning at the time of the flight. And you have testified in the U.S. Senate hearing that had the U.S. Secret Service counter-drone equipment been working probably, quote, you may have possibly been able to stop Crooks. We've also learned that requests from the agent responsible for the counter-drone equipment for increased counter-unmanned aerial systems capabilities and earlier access were denied as well. So several times today, and actually in your opening remarks, you talked a little bit about the different ways that state and local and you all work together in making sure that these locations are secured and your protectees are protected. But right now, state and local law enforcement don't have the legal authority to operate counter-drone equipment to advance detection or mitigation. And actually, interestingly, in your opening remarks, you made a reference to the fact that you felt as though that might be something that they should have the ability to do. Would it have been useful if state and local law enforcement had additional capabilities and legal authorities to be able to conduct counter-drone detection and mitigation to support the Secret Service, sir?
I do, with proper coordination with FAA.
Thank you. That's my first question, and there is several ideas in this Congress that are bouncing around to be able to give you those authorities, and I would love it if I could ask for your support in helping make sure that that happens. My next set of questions has to do with some of the testimony that we had in our first hearing, where I'm, unlike some folks here, my background is in engineering, and I focus a lot on emerging threats, cybersecurity, biotechnology, and biothreats. And I'm struck by the fact that we're kind of always trying to solve for the last problem that we had, and the last problem that we had was a sniper on a rooftop. And obviously, things are evolving, threats are evolving, and your kind of work needs to evolve alongside it. Representative Joyce talked a little bit about the appropriations process, and you talked a little bit about the Office of Protective Research that sounds like is now defunct. What kinds of things are you doing, and what kinds of things can Congress be doing to help you stay abreast of those kinds of emerging threats, to make sure that you can coordinate with DOD and with DARPA and those kinds of things, so we're not kind of constantly reinventing the wheel on this? What can we be doing to help, and what are you doing as well?
So definitely, and again, obviously the color of money, right? O&S money is fantastic, but PC&I money, to be able to go out and acquire things is critical for us. It's critical for the Secret Service. We've certainly had challenges with getting enough PC&I money through the years. That's a separate conversation. But being able to have an applied research element within the Secret Service now is going to be able to have us regularly now go out and interface with all these other entities, the private sector, Silicon Valley, others that are doing innovative things that can be helpful to us, because it's not just about physical protection, it's cyber protection as well.
Absolutely, and to the degree that we can continue to be helpful with that and helping you with the color of money and making sure that you have those resources, please do let us know. And also, I think one of the things that I was struck by when we were investigating, trying to understand what had happened, is we were able to see a kind of a creation of what his drone saw, and what the angles, sight lines and things were. And I was struck by the fact that this was kind of the first time that we thought about those kinds of things, at least on this side of the world. And I'm certain that there are a lot of technologies and ideas that are maybe on DOD side or other places where you all can benefit from these, and FBI as well can benefit from the kind of work that DOD is already doing. With the last couple seconds that I have, training for the guy who didn't know how to fix the drone. What are we doing to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
So we've actually established an airspace and aviation section. So now they are the folks that go out and are primarily responsible for all of the counter UAS and all of the enabling UAS. And so now that we have a direct hiring authority, we have this ability now, thanks to OPM, they were very cooperative, we can go out and hire drone operators. You can fly them remotely from Washington if you need to. My goal is to get more drone operators and people with this expertise downrange in the field so that they can go out and do this and are there on the ground. And that's going to help us fly drones and identify line of sight vulnerabilities, get that eye in the sky perspective as we're doing our advance.
Thank you. I yield back. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Mullen. Now recognize Representative Lee from Florida for 5 minutes.
That lady was actually one of the most insightful speaker that they had, that actually asked a very interesting question. She spoke about, technologies and drones, and of course, DARPA, as mobile app said in the chat. Those are very important questions. And somebody said, so the FBI don't know how to operate drones. I mean, I don't even understand what's going on here, but this is the Secret Service, okay? This is Secret Service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director Rowe, for being here with us today. As is evident by today's hearing and will also be evident in the forthcoming report, this committee has successfully been able to develop a detailed overview of the facts and circumstances surrounding the days of these two assassination attempts, and we'll be able to provide some specific suggestions and transparency about those events going forward. The Secret Service has been cooperative with this committee, and we appreciate your efforts to ensure that we had information that was necessary to make this process meaningful. And we've received a lot of information from you that help inform what is needed with respect to resources, technology, and training. But I would like to discuss with you another aspect of protective work that I believe is also critical to the success of our mission here today. You testified earlier that part of successful protective work also includes being aware of and considering the actual threat environment. So would it be correct to say that when you all are engaged in protective work, one of the things that you do is go to the actual site, assess the physical location, and make an assessment of the specific geography and needs associated with securing any specific event site?
Yes.
Is it also correct to say that part of preparing for these types of events is to analyze the actual threat information that you have, whether it is a specific active threat going on, a greater threat landscape, that you also consider the types of threats and the threat environment that is active at the time of an event you're trying to secure?
Yes.
So would you agree that you're fighting a big diversity of threats? You mentioned earlier things such as a lone wolf actor, a nation state actor, that there are an incredible diversity of threat actors that you are trying to fight against.
Yes.
And so for us as Congress, with our mission here, which is to understand what has happened and what you need, how we can equip the United States Secret Service to effectively perform their mission, would you also agree that it would be useful or constructive for us to have access to that type of information as we go forward and attempt to finalize our assessment of the going forward future needs of the United States Secret Service?
Yes.
And here, I would like to say this. I noted earlier that the Secret Service has been responsive with us and has provided us with a great deal of information and insight about your operations, what you did in preparation for these 2 days, and what went wrong. But it is important to note information that this committee does not have from the Department of Justice, including components of the Department of Justice, the FBI, and ATF, and what we do not have from those agencies, to include digital analysis of electronic devices belonging to crooks, the same for electronic devices belonging to Ralph, interview summaries for the family members of crooks who were interviewed by the FBI after this event, any sort of overall financial analysis of these 2 individuals and who they were and what they were doing. So while we have an extensive and thorough analysis of the logistics, the specific things that happened on that day, who was standing where, who wasn't on a radio, how we could improve the implementation of the security measures that were in place that day, in a very real sense, we do not have some of the critical intelligence information that might have helped us even better understand the needs of your agency going forward. Our mission on this task force is to understand what went wrong on the day of the attempted assassination, ensure accountability, and prevent such a failure from ever happening again. And I would assert that preventing such a failure from ever happening again necessitates that this Congress has access to all of the relevant information related to these days, related to the actual threat landscape that affects not only President Trump, but other protectees that are under your care. So I beseech and suggest to the Department of Justice going forward that this is information that can and should and must be provided to Congress if we are to understand how to equip and support our federal law enforcement agencies. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you. You're spot on, Ms. Lee. Now I want to recognize Representative Ivey from Maryland for 5 minutes. Mr. Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the ranking member and my colleagues for such bipartisan work here, and thank you to the staff as well. Thank you to you, Mr. Rowe. I appreciate what you've been doing and how you've been cooperating with us and the work that you've done at the Secret Service as well. I did want to follow up on Representative Houlihan's questions about drones. I do appreciate the fact that you've addressed many of the issues with respect to the failures that occurred on that day. But I do want to be mindful of making sure we're not just fighting the last battle, and we're looking ahead to the future, as Ms. Houlihan suggested as well. And I don't know that I want you to answer what I'm about to ask you, at least not in open session, but on October 7th, Hamas used drones to attack, actually to launch its attack against Israel. The drones appeared to me, and based on what I've seen in videos, to be relatively unsophisticated, relatively inexpensive, but very effective in carrying out that mission so that Hamas could breach Israel's front line and commit the attack that occurred later that day. And we've also seen what's happened with Russia and Ukraine with respect to the use of drones too. And frankly, we were seeing this before July 13th, pretty extensively, I think. So one of the things I want to ask, use of drones for that day, I know we've talked about the visibility piece, I think was your word, reconnaissance and the like. But I want to hear from you, maybe not in public, but maybe in executive session, about the countermeasures that are available to the Secret Service to deal with drones that are used to actually conduct the attack. So not just sending information back, but as we saw on October 7th, could actually carry, for example, an explosive device that could be used on that day. Now, I know Chairman Green with Homeland Security, you've heard the passion he brings to this and the background that he has, and he's right, we did have a hearing on this at Homeland Security, not just that issue. And I know this task force dissolves, I think at the end of next week, but I'm hoping that we'll carry forward with this issue, and there are others too. I want to ask you quickly about the radio communications piece, because I know that wasn't, at least some of it wasn't recorded, which surprised me as a local prosecutor, federal prosecutor. The police recorded almost all of their radio communications just as a matter of course. And that was useful to us from a couple of standpoints. One was for prosecution of cases. We'd have actual live time recordings that we could use that we could present to a jury that confirmed the testimony that may have been provided to the jury at that time. But also from a management standpoint, you can go back and listen, and that's one of the first things I asked when we got this, the information was, where are the radio communications? I want to hear what happened that day. Now, we had to settle for, the email communications and the like, the text messaging, the sort of things people did on an ad hoc basis to deal with the emergency in a quick way. I thought that was insufficient. And it seems to me that you should be recording these just as a matter of course for the reasons I stated. Body cams is another one to think about, I would say. I know that can be expensive in a way that radio communications are not, but also extremely valuable in the prosecution of the cases. You've got, there's nothing to prosecute with respect to July 13th, but there is with respect to Mar-a-Lago, and I don't know what the evidence there is, but that's the type of information that could be useful. And then with my last minute, I wanted to pick up on what Representative Lee raised a moment ago. This isn't really to you, actually. This is to my former colleagues at the Department of Justice. I recognize that in ongoing criminal investigations, there's a reluctance to turn over information too soon because it can undermine the investigation. You can tip off defendants and targets and the like. So you want to be careful about that, and I understand that. But I must say, too, that there's some information that we didn't get, and she outlined some of that didn't seem to be connected to an ongoing criminal investigation, and I thought that we should have had access to that. And I'll note this as well. I've done some previous investigations, the Whitewater hearings, for example, when I was a staffer many years ago, where we were able to communicate with the independent counsel on an ongoing basis, and we did that in the wake of the Iran-Contra disaster where they immunized Ali North, compelled him to testify. Department of Justice then ended up having to dismiss the case. It was thrown out of court because of the information sharing that took place. But even in the wake of that, Congress was able to work with the independent counsel and it can with the Department of Justice in making sure that we get the information that we need to handle these kinds of situations, because this is about as serious as it gets from the standpoint of what we're tasked to do. This is extremely important work. We would need to make sure that our elections are controlled by ballots and not bullets, and this was relevant here. But thank you for what you've done and the work you've continued to do, the direction you're taking the Secret Service in. Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to run over. And I thank all of you, all my colleagues here and the staff again for the outstanding bipartisan work that you've been able to do.
Thank you, Mr. Ivey. Now we recognize Mr. Fallon from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the work that you and Ranking Member Rowe and the rest of the committee has done, and certainly our staff. Mr. Rowe, would you agree that the protection that President Trump was provided on the 13th of July was wholly and tragically negligent?
This the man right here. This man right here cooked. He cooked, guys. This man right here cooked. He was cooking. We need to listen to this with ultimate attention. He was cooking. Listen to this.
Site plan was abysmal to the point of derelict. And on the 13th of July in Butler, Pennsylvania, the United States Secret Service not only failed President Trump, but Corey Comparatori and the American people in historic fashion.
I would.
In the months leading up to July 13th, who was the director of the Secret Service?
Kimberly Cheadle.
Okay. Other than former Director Cheadle, who was the most senior Secret Service agent?
In the agency? That would be me. I was the
Correct.
deputy director.
In the months leading up to the July of 24, were you made aware of highly credible intelligence that a serious and grave threat to President Trump's life from an adversarial nation state? There was a very serious threat.
In this open setting, Congressman, I can't discuss what I was or was not aware of.
Well, the former Director Cheadle said she was aware. So I would imagine, by extension, you were aware. You said in open session that...
I would point to Director Cheadle's
All right, so you were aware. So we have a unique circumstance here because we had a former president of the United States who is the leading candidate at that time to be the next president of the United States, and he will be now that we know. And he was being threatened by a foreign nefarious nation state because of actions he took while he was president of the United States. Very unique circumstances. So being that you were aware of these unique circumstances, did President Trump, was he provided a security detail akin to what a sitting president would receive?
At that time,
he was not. He was not. Would you agree that if there was a counter-surveillance unit there in Butler on the 13th, he would have been safer?
I think if there was a counter-surveillance unit advance that was on the ground, it could have aided the advance team in identifying the AGR.
So he would have been safer? President Trump
yes,
would have been safer? Yeah, okay. I don't think this would have even occurred, but be that as it may, did the president's detail request a CSU, to your knowledge?
I'm not aware of a request for CSU.
Now, was the threat from the nefarious nation state disseminated to agents in the field and in the protective details?
I'm just pausing, Congressman, because I'm trying to walk a tightrope here in an open setting. What I can tell you is that the Secret Service provided assets on that day for a particular...
What I can tell you, sir, is that the folks that are whistleblowing and informing some members of Congress say that they were not aware of this threat. And that's what I'm getting at with being proactive and showing leadership is we know for a fact that there was no CSU in Butler. Was there a full CAT team there?
There was not.
No. A full CAT team, 6 members, and there were 2 there. So you knew of the threat. You didn't disseminate to the field and the protective details. President Trump didn't have a protection that was akin to a sitting president. He didn't have the CSU. He had only the 1/3 of the CAT team. So that's that kind of ineptitude and inaction and complacency and neglect that really, quite frankly, is as telling as it is chilling. And had it not been for a very blessed, fortuitous, and a happenstance of a perfectly timed turn of a head, President Trump would have lost his life that day. Now, this is another thing that concerns me. We report to our constituents.
That's true.
And instead of really, after this happened, did you go the next day to Butler, Pennsylvania on the 14th of July?
I did not.
Okay. Did you go that week?
I did not.
Okay. The FBI held that site secure for 5 days as an active crime scene, and they released it back to the owners on the 18th. And you did not visit. And when did you finally visit the site?
I visited about a day after I was appointed.
So July 24th? Cheadle came in July 22nd. She got skewered and roasted by the Democrats and Republicans on the Oversight Committee, of which I sit on. She resigned the next day, and then only that day did you go.
I'll take your word for it, Congressman.
Why'd you wait 9 days? 11 days?
Why did I wait 9 days?
Director of the FBI went to the site. Why didn't you go?
Congressman, I think I was appointed July 23rd, and I was there on the 24th or 25th.
But you were the second most senior member of the Secret Service. You could have gone.
And I was managing from here the crisis. We actually
Okay, so you didn't go.
dispatched.
Got it. Did you call the, you were managing the crisis you just said. Did you call the detail that night on July 13th that was protecting President Trump?
On that night, they were operational, sir.
You did not. Okay. Did
I
you
did
call him
not.
the next day?
No, I did not.
Okay. When did you finally talk to him?
I spoke to them when they arrived in Milwaukee.
So 4 days later, July 17th.
Yeah, that's BS. Come on, man. That magnitude, the accident that happened was a humongous accident. Something that was that huge. Something of that magnitude. And you waited 4 days to call. I mean, you were really making sense until you were saying that it took you 11 days to go to the site. It took you 4 days to call after you watched what happened.
That sound about right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you waited 4 days. And when we were talking earlier, a couple months ago, this is an epic failure. We all agree on that. And instead of really focusing on the egregious errors and correcting the incompetence and improving the doctrine and changing the culture, there was a massive appropriations request. We know that you have 8,000 employees. We know that they have a $3.1 billion budget, and you asked for $2 billion additional dollars. What sticks in our craw is when we report to our constituents, we have to say, hey, this federal agency failed epically, and then they wanted to almost double their budget. How much would it have cost to put somebody on that water tower? How much would it have cost to have drones that were actually functioning that day? How much would it have cost to have an ether cable to where your anti-drone technology would have worked? How much would it have cost to do a walkthrough with local law enforcement to secure the AGR site, or put cameras on that roof, or put agents on that roof, or have your snipers have iPads, or have one command post instead of two, or cordon off the damn AGR complex, 17 acres? That would have cost $2 billion. And in fact, with caution tape, signs, posts, and stakes, it would have run about $410 because we ran through it. Let's add another zero. Say it's $4 grand. It's not $2 billion. So I got another question for you. Do you recognize this photo?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay.
Okay, so here is the spice. Get ready, get your popcorn, because the spice is about to be spicy.
Was that the remembrance of September 11th?
It was.
Was it in New York?
It was at Ground Zero.
Okay. Who's usually at an event like this closest to the President of the United States, security-wise?
The SAC of the detail.
Special agent in charge of the detail. Were you the special agent in charge of the detail that day?
Actually, let me address this. Could you please, staff, leave that? Oh, no, leave that one up with the circle around me. Thank you. So actually, Congressman, what you're not seeing is the SAC of the detail out of the picture's view. And that is the day where we remember the more than 3,000 people that have died on 9/11. I actually responded to Ground Zero. I was there going through the ashes of the World Trade Center. I was there at Fresh Kills.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you,
Congressman.
were you the special agent in charge?
To show respect
You were not.
for a Secret
that's
Service
a bunch of
member
horse hockey.
that died on 9/11.
Oh, that you were trying to be.
Do not invoke 9/11 for political purposes.
Oh, that not. I'm invoking this.
You are, sir.
Gentlemen,
and you are out of line.
I would like to ask him a question.
Please.
You are
Order.
out of line, Congressman.
Don't try to bully me.
Order.
We're gonna go back. We are going to go back.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Was that the remembrance of September 11th?
It was.
Was it in New York?
It was at Ground Zero.
Okay. Who's usually at an event like this closest to the President of the United States, security-wise?
The SAC of the detail.
Special agent in charge of the detail. Were you the special agent in charge of the detail that day?
Actually, let me address this. Could you please, staff, leave that? Oh, no, leave that one up with the circle around me. Thank you. So actually, Congressman, what you're not seeing is the SAC of the detail out of the picture's view. And that is the day where we remember the more than 3,000 people that have died on 9/11. I actually responded to Ground Zero. I was there going through the ashes of the World Trade Center. I was there at Fresh Kills.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you,
Congressman.
were you the special agent in charge?
To show respect
You were not.
for a Secret
That's
Service
a bunch of
member
horse hockey.
that died on 9/11.
Oh, that you're trying to be.
Do not invoke 9/11 for political purposes.
They're they're acting like high school kids trying to win a girl or trying to show who has the biggest balls. What is going on here?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Was that the remembrance of September 11th?
It was.
Was it in New York?
It was at Ground Zero.
Okay. Who's usually at an event like this closest to the President of the United States, security-wise?
The sack of the detail.
Special agent in charge of the detail. Were you the special agent in charge of the detail that day?
Actually, let me address this. Could you please, staff, leave that? Oh, no, leave that one up with the circle around me. Thank you. So actually, Congressman, what you're not seeing is the sack of the detail out of the picture's view. And that is the day where we remember the more than 3,000 people that have died on 9/11. I actually responded to Ground Zero. I was there going through the ashes of the World Trade Center. I was there at Fresh Kills.
I'm not asking you that.
I was
I'm asking
there,
you,
Congressman.
were you the special agent in charge?
To show respect
You were not.
for a Secret
That's
Service
a bunch of
member
horse hockey.
that died on 9/11.
Oh, that you're trying to be.
Do not invoke 9/11 for political purposes.
Oh, I'm not. I'm invoking this.
You are, sir.
Gentlemen,
And you are out of line.
I would like to ask him a question.
Please.
You are
Order.
out of line,
Order.
Congressman.
Don't
Way
try
out
to
of
bully
line.
me. I am an elected member of Congress, and I'm asking you a serious question, and you are
I
playing
am a
politics.
public servant who has served this nation and
You
spent
won't answer
time
the question.
on our country's darkest
Mr.
day.
Chairman, Committee
You
will come
Do
to
not
order.
politicize it.
Committee will come to order.
I'm asking you serious questions for the American people, and they're very simple. They're not trick questions. Were you the special agent in charge that
No,
day?
I wasn't. I was there
Oh, no,
representing
Mr.
the
Chairman,
United
I'm
States
just
Secret
asking you yes or
Service,
no.
sir.
Mr. Fallon, your
and
time's
did not
expired.
affect protective
Fallon,
You know
operations.
why you were
time's
there?
expired.
Because you wanted to be visible, because you were auditioning for this
I was
job
there to
that
pay
you're not gonna
respect for a
get
fallen
till
member of
January
this
20th.
agency.
You endangered
You are
President
out of
Biden's
line,
life,
Congressman.
Vice President
You are out of
Harris's
line.
life, because you put those agents out of position.
Mr.
Did you have a
Chairman.
radio with
Mr.
you?
Fallon,
Did you
your
wear a
time
vest?
has
Did you have a
expired.
weapon?
Mr.
No.
I did, sir, and you are out of line.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
please.
All right. And we are back
You're
in
a
order
bully.
now. We are back in order now.
Thank you.
Mr. Moskowitz, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Okay,
Congressman?
how you doing?
Good, sir.
All right. So, look, the reason emotions are high is because we almost did have a former president, and now the president-elect literally almost killed live on television. And there were two pieces of luck that day, one bad, one good. The Secret Service's luck ran out that day because the systemic failures didn't start on July 13th. They were probably occurring, and the luck ran out that day. But luckily, President Trump moved his head and he wasn't killed. I can't imagine where we would be if we didn't have that second piece of luck. And so everyone here brings their different experience. I'm a former emergency management director. I know disasters when I see them, right? And July 13th was an absolute disaster. There's just no question about that. And I've done after action reviews, and you go through the things, in your response to a hurricane and what failed, and then you're like a general fighting the last war. We're gonna fix the things that failed that day. But really, you gotta do more of a holistic approach, not just look at the things that failed that day, the things that aren't working in general, bigger picture, and not just fix just those specific things. I also am familiar about what it's like to come into an agency and clean up someone else's mess, which is what you're doing, and quite frankly. And so I applaud you for that, right? You've been handed, a ship with a hole in it, and it's taken on water, and you got to figure out how to fix the hole and get the water out of the boat at the same time. And so I applaud you for stepping up and doing that. I want to talk about one of the comments that multiple people made on this committee, and it's for your agency and it's for other agencies, which is that a lot of time we get stuck in this process thing. Oh, because of process, we can't communicate with the public, or we're not going to communicate with Congress because of process. Agencies need to change with the times. Things are different now. And when you guys don't put out information, that vacuum gets filled with conspiracy theories. We talk about restoring faith in the institutions. Yes, government needs to work, and people need to see that they're competent. But at the same time, we're not going to be able to restore that faith if the agencies aren't communicating with the public and instead are getting conspiracy theories online because no one else is giving them information. And that's going to be a push-pull that you, DOJ, the FBI, are going to have to deal with in today's world of communications. Other people will tell your story for you, and it will be false if you don't tell it. I want to talk about two specific things, and then I want to get to page 7 of the report, which for me is the most important. The 9/11 Commission recommended fixing the comms issue by creating a network. AT&T, FirstNet, I think Verizon has one as well. We knew about the comm failures that day, the throttling the radios, people on different systems, and yet 20 years, 25 years later, your agency is still struggling with the same problems we had on 9/11. Officers using their own personal cell phones, not on the network that was made for emergency personnel, which would have worked that day. Procurement. I want to talk about procurement because it's something that most people don't think about, and it's not sexy. And I did tons of procurement when I was the emergency management director. One of the reasons why we have this problem, and it's not just at the federal level, I saw it at the shooting in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas at my high school between the city police versus the county, the sheriff's office, is everyone's doing their own procurement. Every city, every county, every state, every federal agency, every sector is doing different procurement. And you're all hiring different companies with different systems, and no one talks to each other. Computer systems, radio systems, whatever it is. And we're not going to fix this problem until we figure out how to do more of a comprehensive procurement for multiple agencies to get them on the same systems. And so that's a system piece, but I'm telling you, we're not going to fix this problem until that happens. But I want to talk about page 7 of the report. There's a line in there, and I'm not going to ask you to comment because I know what the answer will be. I've been through this. Page 7 of the report says, Congress must consider whether the Secret Service investigative obligations can effectively coexist with its primary protective mission and whether the agency's investigative functions should remain within the Department of Homeland Security. Yahtzee. And I will tell you that Homeland Security was the right to create it. Senator Lieberman was right. It has a core function. It should exist. We need to foster communication between our agencies, but I would surmise that the Department of Homeland Security has become too big. It can't function. It's 22 agencies, and it's just gigantic. And every director, administrator of FEMA that I've talked to, when they were in the agency, wouldn't tell me that. But as soon as they left, they would say, we can't make the changes that we know we need to make within FEMA because we can't get it done within Homeland. And so I'm going to be filing a bill the first day of next Congress to remove FEMA and Secret Service from Homeland Security and make them direct reports to the White House. I think the changes you want to make, I think you'll be able to make them quicker if you're not within Homeland. And so if we really want to talk about having our agencies respond faster, having our agencies fix these problems that didn't just exist on July 3rd, probably existed a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, we have to be serious about breaking up Homeland Security. We have to realize that a 22 agency department cannot function efficiently. So it's quite frankly the reason why I joined the DOJ committee, to some people's misconception. I joined it with a specific focus on trying to fix Homeland because that's where this conversation is going to happen, right? And so while we look at the report, I would tell you not to overlook page 7.
Yeah, he's stuck it too much.
Everything we talked about technology, everything we talked about, everything Representative Green talked about.
Way too much.
About culture, right? You actually had a funny line. You said you want to put the Secret Service You want to put the secret back in Secret Service. I think Representative Green was making sure you don't forget about the service piece also, right? But I think you got to get outside of Homeland. I do. And I'm not going to ask you to comment on that, because trust me, I've had 100 conversations, and when they're in public, they're very different than when they are in private. Everyone knows.
Come on.
Everyone knows that Homeland is not working in its current condition. But you know what happens? Everyone wants to protect their sacred cow. Staff on the Homeland Security Committee, right?
Bro.
They won't let it happen. Homeland doesn't want to let it happen because they'll want more. 22, they'll take 30, right? I mean, it's just the way it's working. So, you know, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank your leadership running the committee. I want to thank Ranking Member Crow. I think the report is very important, and I think we've done it on a bipartisan basis. But I really want to hit this point home. If we are serious about making these changes, then we got to get serious about we have an agency that is not functioning in Homeland because it's just too big. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, sir. Before we close, I want to turn to Ranking Member Crow for brief closing remarks.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the members for this hearing. You know, this was an overwhelmingly bipartisan, productive hearing. I mean, the questions from the members were serious and robust, and clearly they took their charge to learn the issues and to dive into the investigation very seriously. And I also want to
Facts.
thank
JM.
you, Acting Director Rowe.
Wasted.
You know, I've been in Congress now almost 6 years, and I've been in plenty of situations where there are directors and department heads and acting directors and department heads who are in crisis situations, right? Or contingency situations where there's a crisis within their agency or something that has gone wrong. I mean, this is an oversight hearing, so more often than not, there's something that has gone wrong. And there's people that deal with that in a variety of different ways. But in my experience, and I don't want to speak for the chairman, and he'll have a chance to speak about this, but we've talked a lot about this, and you've been very candid. You've been very open. You have accepted responsibility for the things that we feel like the service has had to accept responsibility for. You obviously were not the director on July 13th. The deputy director of agencies has different responsibilities. Usually personnel management is what deputy directors do. Then you stepped into the role and have, I think, done a very good job of remediating, mitigating, and providing a path and vision forward. So I thank you for that and your continued service. And I also want to make really clear, you know, when we're talking about the Secret Service, like any of these organizations, they are broad, diverse organizations of thousands of people. And there's no doubt that there were security failures on July 13th and things didn't go right. But I also want to be very careful not to paint everybody with a broad brush. There are people that did not do their jobs, and there needs to be accountability for that. But there's also no doubt in my mind that there were many people who did do their jobs, that showed up with the right mentality, the seriousness, the commitment, who would have jumped up and took that bullet. In fact, after the shooting, did go on the stage and do what they needed to do and were willing to risk their lives. And I want to thank them. I think it's really important that we draw that distinction here, because I know a lot of those officers and agents are listening here today. And for those folks that show up every day with that commitment to excellence, who are willing to put their lives on the line, that we see them too, right? And we appreciate their service in what they do, because we don't want to put your agency in a position where this is a negative detractor from morale. It makes it harder for you to right the ship. So that distinction is very important in that regard. I also hope America saw that we did come together in a bipartisan way and fulfill our mandate of looking at these 2 attempted assassination attempts. We took it seriously. You couldn't watch this hearing today and actually see who was a Democrat and Republican. If you took our name placards down here, Americans wouldn't be able to tell, who was. This was issue focused. This was focused on our mandate, and I think that's really telling. And I would encourage folks to watch this if they haven't watched the entirety of the hearing and look at how we conducted our business here. The other thing I want to do is just thank the staff. This was a heavy lift. 5 months, the number of transcribed interviews, document requests, was really substantial. At a time, as the chairman said, many of us were out on the campaign trail and accessible and spread throughout the country. Honestly, it's the staff that did the heavy lifting here, both the Republican and the Democratic staff. They have taken time away from their families. They have taken time away from their jobs. They have left law practices and other lucrative jobs to come and do important work for the American people. And I'm grateful for the work of the staff to put us in a position to submit this report and to tell the story that America deserves to have told. So with that, I want to thank you again, Acting Director Rowe, for your testimony and your commitment to addressing the issues that have been identified here today. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Crow. I want to thank Mr. Rowe for his testimony and for appearing before us today. And I know that at times it can be very emotional because of what took place. I will repeat what I said earlier. I was about 60 feet away from the president when he put his hand to his head and went down, and as the shots were ringing out, my main concern was, oh my gosh, they just shot the president. But I couldn't find my wife, I couldn't find my oldest son, and I couldn't find 3 of my grandchildren where they were supposed to be. They were not put where they were supposed to be that day. They were left to wander someplace else, which I'll never understand. Look, it's a very emotional thing. We can talk through these things and be very orderly about it, or we can look at what happened that day and say, and I think I got this feeling from the Captain Higgins. When you look at the history of the United States, there are certain things that are always going to stand out. I will just tell you this about my hometown of Butler, Pennsylvania. It was once recognized as the birthplace of the Jeep. It is now recognized as the location where the attempted assassination of Donald Trump took place. So it's overshadowed everything else that that town was ever known for and what they're so proud of and how wounded they were that day. And I will say this again, I've said it before, local law enforcement was the first direction that fingers were pointed, that these local law enforcement guys, gosh, they just didn't do their job. They didn't do their job. I know them personally. I know how deeply wounded they were by that. And I think that we have to understand these are real people doing real things in real time. So when I'm out shopping, people come up to me and say, you know what happened that day? I said, well, you know, I have a pretty good idea. They said, well, let me tell you my version. And they tell me their version. I said, that's interesting. So where were you on the grounds that day? They said, well, I actually wasn't there. Now, why do people come up with these conspiracy theories? They come up with conspiracy theories because they don't get answers at the time they're needed. And I think that what we're trying to do, and I got to tell you, this is not a red committee or a blue committee. This is truly a red, white, and blue committee. And I will defy anybody to look at any of the members that are sitting up here today and say, I've seen this guy before in action. I know who he is. He's on Fox every night, or he's on CNN, whatever the hell people go on. Excuse me. I know we're not supposed to use any language like that. Chairman Green, I know that it's a very emotional thing for you too. So it isn't a funny issue, and it's something that does bring out the best of us and the worst in us. So whenever Jason and I first talked, and we were, and Ms. Lee mentioned this, we were given three goals. There was threefold. Understand what went wrong on the day of the attempted assassination, ensure accountability, and to prevent such an agency failure from ever happening again. I know when I first talked to Representative Clay, he said, you can never guarantee that it will never happen again. And the longer I've worked with him, and I would encourage all of you to, if you can, draw up on your phones the captain when he's speaking, when he's in Louisiana. You will get the full force of who this man is and what he firmly believes and what his mission in life is. So you can be very animated. I'm amazed at how you operate today because you're very, you stick with it. But I would encourage anybody, go to that and please look at it and then tell me, wow, this guy's dedicated to that. So look, we're gonna adjourn here in a minute, but without objection, members have 5 days to submit additional materials and written questions for witnesses to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witness. And we ask the witness to please respond promptly. This has been an interesting time. And I know we're supposed to close, but I think that because Jace hit on it, the efforts and the time and the dedication that this team has put into this is incredible. I'm not talking about members because, as you know, we had an election coming up, but these members never left here. They spent hour after hour after hour, thousands and thousands of pages, written testimony. It is incredible what took place, but you'll never see that because that's not the headline. The headline is we had a really dedicated group of patriots who said, I will step out of my normal life, and for the next 4 months, I will dedicate myself to getting the answers that the American people need to have from the very first. We are suffering from a lack of confidence, trust, and faith in our government. If we can't do these things and bring it back out and go to the American people, we know you had questions, we've got you the answers. That was our whole purpose in doing this. And so I look back at it, and I will again, I'm going to mention this. At the end of that day, my brother lives at the end of the runway, by the way, on those fields. My 9-year-old grandson, Charles, said to me, Grandpa, why would anybody try to kill President Trump? I said, Charles, I can't answer that question. He said, they must be crazy. This was a 9-year-old, and people asked me, what was the effect on your grandchildren? I said, I got to tell you, as their grandfather, I'm appalled that they ever had to see that. As a member of Congress, it strengthened my resolve that, you know what, we can go beyond this. We can be better than anybody imagined we could be, and we can accept the fact that we failed that day and understand that everybody on this panel had one goal and one goal only, and that was to restore the faith and trust and confidence that the American people need to have in our agencies. So I want to note that the task force will hold its business meeting following the conclusion of this hearing, and we will adjourn the hearing and reset the room for the business meeting. We're going to take 15 minutes, so I think it's drifted a little bit beyond. I said 11:50. What? Okay, 11:50. We'll reconvene. Again, I want to thank Director. Thanks for being here. I know this is a difficult position to be in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. Double tap your screen. Let's get the likes up, everybody. Double tap your screen twice. Double tap your screen twice. Let's get the likes up, everybody. With that being said, I want us to rewind it and actually play this part again. I just want y'all to watch this. This is too funny.
Because we ran through it. Let's add another zero. Say it's $4,000. It's not $2 billion. So I got another
Listen
question
to this.
for you.
If you're just tuning in, listen to this.
You recognize this photo?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Was that the remembrance of September 11th?
It was.
Was it in New York?
It was at Ground Zero.
Okay. Who's usually at an event like this closest to the President of the United States, security-wise?
The SAC of the detail.
Special agent in charge of the detail. Were you the special agent in charge of the detail that day?
Actually, let me address this. Could you please, staff, leave that? Oh, no, leave that one up with the circle around me. Thank you. So actually, Congressman, what you're not seeing is the SAC of the detail out of the picture's view. And that is the day where we remember the more than 3,000 people that have died on 9/11. I actually responded to Ground Zero. I was there going through the ashes of the World Trade Center. I was there at...
Is it He did say
Fresh kills.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you,
Congressman,
were you the special agent in charge?
To show respect
You were not.
for a Secret Service member that died on 9/11.
Oh, that you're trying to be.
Do not invoke 9/11 for political purposes.
Oh, I'm not. I'm invoking this.
You are,
Here we go.
No,
and you are out of line.
I would like to ask him a question.
Please.
You are
Order.
out of line, Congressman.
Don't try to bully me. I
Order.
am an elected member of Congress, and I'm asking you a serious question, and you are.
He said, don't try to bully me. Don't bully me. You are out of line.
I'm a public servant who has served this nation and
You
spent
won't answer
time
the question.
on our day, on our country's darkest
Mr.
day.
Chairman,
Committee
he will
will
not
come
answer
to
Do not
order.
politicize it.
Committee will come to order.
I'm asking you serious questions for the American people, and they're very simple. They're not trick questions. Were you the special agent in charge that
No,
day?
I wasn't. I was there representing
Mr.
the
Chairman,
United
I'm
States
just asking
Secret
you yes or
Service,
no.
sir.
Mr. Fallon, your
and
time's
did not
expired.
affect protective
Fallon,
You know
operations.
why
your
you were
time has
there?
expired.
Because you wanted to be visible, because you were auditioning for this
I was
job
there to
that
pay
you're not gonna
respect for a
get
fallen
till
member of
January
this
20th.
agency.
You endangered
You are
President
out of line,
Biden's life,
Congressman.
Vice
You
President
are out of
Harris's
line.
life, because you put those agents out of position.
Mr.
Did you have a
Chairman.
radio with
Mr.
you?
Fallon,
Did
your
you wear a
time
vest?
has
Did you have a
expired.
weapon?
Mr.
No.
I did, sir, and you are out of line.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
The dignity.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
please.
All right. And we are back
You're
in
a
order
bully.
now. We are back in order now.
Thank you.
It's like you're a bully.
Mr. Mo-
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Welcome to the live stream. We have been streaming for 2 hours, 45 minutes. Well, 2 hours, 46 minutes and 5 seconds. Okay. It is time to call it a night. But before I go, I want to show you how to give this video a like. I want you to double tap your screen. Let's get the likes to 100 likes, everybody. Let's get this stream to 100 likes. All right. With that being said, this is how to like the stream. You double tap twice. Double tap twice, double tap twice, and you would have given this video a like. All right. Shout out to the moderators, Dana. God bless you. Dana is on a happy hour today. She's having a good time. So everybody has pointy ears, and she's just having a good time, man. Did I say Sheila? Did I say Chad? Chad, my boy Chad. God bless you, Chad. Chad, you still have to pull me through with the trading, bro. Yeah, I gotta know what's up. You know what time it is, bro. All right, BR549. Yes, sir. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Pugly747. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. You guys are the best. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Double tap your screen. Let's get the likes up. Let's get the likes up. And if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing, okay? We stream every day, probably twice, 3 times a day. All right? Let's get the likes up. God bless you guys. You guys are the best. All right. With that being said, Daddy gotta go. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. Believe in God. And God got you, okay? No matter what you're going through, put a smile on your face. It's the weekend, okay? It's the weekend. Come on, man. Relax, okay? You're going to continue on Monday. Just relax. Catch that deep breath. Drink some water. Get a glass like Dana, okay? Have your own happy hour. Get a glass like Dana or some trees because I know Dana having a good time tonight. But with that being said, you guys have a good time. You know, God got you. Things may be hard now, but I promise you, you will see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, hard times don't last, but tough people last, okay? So stay tough, stay strong. Remember the 45th. He went through a lot in 2020 and he came back in 2024. So be like the 47th president elect. Fight, fight, fight. God bless you guys. You guys are the best. It is your boy Genesis. Have a wonderful night. And we got to 100 likes. Double tap your screen one more time. You know what time it is. God bless you. Genesis is signing out. Have a wonderful night.